it's preparing to go live. There you are.
Okay, we're having a few technical difficulties, so we're a little bit late getting started here, trying to get those worked out so we can get all of our members on board. So we'll start off, call a meeting to order, and we'll have our secretary, Donna Shippen, call the roll, please.
Okay. Representative Andrew.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Connolly.
Here.
Representative Harshman.
Here.
Representative Nyman.
Here.
Representative Newsom.
Here.
Representative Obermueller.
Excused for now.
Representative Summers.
Here.
Chairman Paxton.
Here. Okay, since we have some new members on board, I think maybe I'd like to start off with some introductions, and I'll just start it off. I'm Jerry Paxton. I live over in Encampment. This is my fifth term in the House of Representatives, and the fifth time I've served, or fifth term that I've served on the Education Committee, and first time as chairman. I represent House District 47, which is, I'm told, the largest legislative district in the lower 48 states. That's 12,118 square miles. Starts over in Rock River, takes in all of Carbon County except for Rollins and Sinclair, and goes up to Farson. So I have 13 towns in the district and not a stoplight in the district. So a lot of the red desert out there. Okay, and then I'd like to start with Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ocean Andrew. I'm from House District 46. I live in Jelm, Wyoming, and I am a freshman legislator.
All right, Vice Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Landon Brown. I represent House District 9, which is basically Northeast Cheyenne proper. Been in the legislature now for 3 terms, and all 3 terms been serving on the Education Committee as well as Transportation and Military Affairs.
All right, thank you. Minority Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kathy Connolly. I represent House District 13 in the middle of Laramie. And I think what we have on this committee is the largest geographic district in the state and the smallest. I think I represent the smallest by geography, pretty much a 2x1, little 2-mile, little sliver in the middle of Laramie. A special hello to Representative Andrew. I literally live 1 block from your district, probably 30 miles from you, but 1 block from your district. I'm happy to be serving on the committee. I'm going in my 12th year, and I've probably served on education for 8 of them, as well as on several of the school finance recalibration committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Former Speaker Harshman.
Morning, afternoon, Mr. Chairman. And this is my 10th. Been honored to serve my 10th term, starting my 10th term representing House District 37, which is kind of Southwest Casper. Speaker Tempest was my predecessor, and when he left, the legislature ran. And I've served on education before, 1 term, I believe, a couple different recalibrations, served on school facilities, 10 years on appropriations, and chaired that committee for 4. And of course, was honored to serve as your speaker, Mr. Chairman, for the 64th and 65th. So I'm really honored to serve on education again. And obviously that's my day job as well. I've been an educator for 35 years. And so it's been a real blessing. So great to serve with all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Representative Newsom.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Newsom. I serve in House District 24, which is West Cody and west all the way to the Montana-Idaho line. Part of my district includes Yellowstone National Park, and have been involved in travel and tourism for years and years. This is my second term, and I served on travel, recreation, wildlife, which I continue to serve on. Also served on transportation and got moved from transportation to education, which I'm very excited about. I think we have a lot of good work to do here, and I'm pleased to be serving with all of you. Thanks.
All right, Representative Obermuller, are you on now?
I am here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm Jerry Obermuller. I represent House District 56. This is my third term and my second time on the Education Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. And Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And this is my fifth term. As you know, we started together. I represent House District 20, most of Sublette County, and I came on the Education Committee with Jerry and Kathy when I first started, and I served 2 terms on education, and then 2 terms on appropriations.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to everyone that's listening out there in the virtually. We have a little bit of,
Representative Nyman.
oh, Representative Nyman, why did I miss you? Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me.
Very
Representative.
good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I had an opportunity to meet a few of you down there when we were in the session the other day. My name is Chip Nyman. I represent House District 1, which is all of Crick County and the northern 1/3 of Weston County. Have ranched and been involved in agriculture all of my life, served on school board in District 1, and look forward to the opportunity to work on education and to serve with all the rest of you. So look forward to the opportunity, and thank you.
Thanks, Chip. We have a little bit of housekeeping to do before we really get started here. LSO has asked us to read this little document here, kind of outlining the recommended guidelines. If you would, first of all, all participants should mute their microphones by default and only turn microphones on when speaking to the group. If you wish to speak, ensure that your video is on and physically raise your hand. Wait to be recognized by the chair. Committee members should always have their video cameras on, and staff and all other participants should only have their cameras on when speaking or wishing to be called on. For oral votes, members should ensure that their video is on and physically raise their hand when the ayes and nays are called for, so that their vote can be seen by the chairman, staff, and the public watching on live video. For roll call votes, after LSO calls a member's name, the member should turn their microphone on and reply, Representative so-and-so says votes yes or no. During the break, both your audio and cameras should be turned off. If you forget, staff may ensure that everyone's mic and cameras are off during the break. This is a little bit different format than what we're used to. This is kind of our first time to kick the tires on this one, and so we may have a few glitches as we go along, but hopefully not too many. We've got some LSO staff and on board with Carla Smith's with us also, and trying to keep us lined out when she can. We're going to be considering 3 bills today, of course. House Bill 2, School Buildings and Facilities Study, House Bill 5, School Buildings and Major Maintenance, House Bill 62, Suicide Prevention. And we're going to start the dialogue on school finance and recalibration. We've got a couple of members on our committee that have been intimately involved with that, and I think this is a bill that we'd like to be able to consider in person. It's got a lot of moving parts, and I know there are a lot of stakeholders that like to weigh in on it. So we will not be working the bill today, but we will be giving some information on it. It looks like the other bills are fairly short. So We're going to start today with House Bill 2, School Buildings and Facilities Study. And I believe both probably Senator Landon and Representative Walters, we should let them in because I believe they are going to present actually the next two bills. So if you could do that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will let Representative Walters and Senator Landon in.
Okay, thank you. Senator Landon, are you going to present this first bill, or is that Representative Walters that's going to present the bill? There we go. Now we can see Representative Walters. Are you going to present this first bill, or is that going to be Senator Landon, or are you going to tag team it?
Mr. Chairman, I think I will be presenting these two bills with Senator Landon backing me up a little bit. Is the plan?
Okay, and I understand we also have a couple of people from the Wyoming Construction Department School Facilities Division that are on hand too, so that we may have to call them in at some point in time, or you can call them in if you'd like to, if there's questions from the committee that we need to have them answer. They're I believe in the waiting room. So
Mr. Chairman, that would be great to have some of their input as well, at your discretion.
Okay, Representative Walters, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you today, members, is House Bill number 2. It is a bill that was sponsored by the Select Committee on School Facilities. And what this bill does is it funds and discusses the study that is needed for schools around the state of Wyoming. So every 5 years, the state studies the capacity and the condition of schools. And for many years, we've had on the books a requirement to study suitability additionally. But suitability was very subjective, or very objective, excuse me. And so it was very difficult to determine what suitability meant. If we went around this room, I think all of us might have a different idea if a school is suitable or not, if we were to walk through that school collectively. And so over the last year and a half, the Select Committee on School Facilities, working with the State Construction School Division, have came up with a way to objectively measure what is suitability. And so in the summer of 2020, the capacity and condition study would have taken place. But because of the committee's desire to hold that off until the summer of 2021 so that the suitability component could be added to that study. And the reason for doing that is it didn't make sense to us to go out and walk through the schools, or the consultant walk through the schools and to look at this capacity and the condition and then walk through the same schools the next summer to study suitability. And so we held off on the capacity and condition study last summer in the hopes of being able to do all three in one fell swoop this coming summer. And so that's what this bill allows to take place. And so in section 1, it discusses that the School Facilities Commission shall study the suitability, capacity, and condition of all public school buildings and school facilities in Wyoming. And this is information that is used not only for building necessity and student needs, but it's also used by the Department of Education for some of their funding models and various items like that. And so this is a tool that's used by many different entities throughout the state for education. And as you can see, that's section 1 starting at the bottom of page 1, and that carries on to the top of page 2. And it discusses in section B that the report will come out no later than October 15th, excuse me, of 2021. And then in section 2 is where the funding comes in. And so it says there's appropriated, and this is on the bottom half of page 2, there's appropriated $6 million from the Strategic Investment Project account to the State Construction Department for the purposes of this act. And the reason we have to appropriate this money in one lump sum is starting in about 2016, we the legislature started rating the account that would normally build up over 5 years to fund this study. And so typically what would happen is the study would be funded and carried out, And then the following year, the legislature would start to put money back into this line item of the school facilities budget, a small portion at a time, so that it was refilled and had adequate funding for the next study 5 years down the road. As I said, the legislature started using that money to fund other things within school capital construction, but knowing all along that when this study came up and was time to be pursued, that the funding would need to be requested and allocated at that time. And so we use it from the SIPA account, and that's it. We did have a lengthy discussion about how we could appropriate funds without showing our hand and saying how much the state is willing to spend on this study. But it's really difficult to do that because we are the legislators, we are the appropriations branch of government, and so we have to designate that amount. And so we just have to put it out there. Where did we come up with $6 million? We discussed it just ad hoc, you might say, with multiple different folks that do this kind of work, consultants that do this kind of work. And this was somewhere in the middle range of what they thought they could accomplish the job for. And so we had to pick a number, and that's why we settled on $6 million. And then finally, section 3 on the top of page 3 is the enacting date. And so this would become effective immediately. And that allows for state construction to go out and do the RFP, get the consultant in place, and be ready to do the study coming up this summer. So it is a short, simple bill. I've tried to give you some background on the whys and wheres of this topic. And with that, I would gladly accept any questions or offer Senator Landon some opportunity to share it. And I'd offer Senator Landon and I co-chair the committee. And so that's why the two of us are here today.
Senator Landon, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. Thank you. And I appreciate the chairman did a great job on the bill. I think he really hit on all the high points. We can always talk about how many facilities we have out there. You know, as you know, being one of our former superintendents of one of the districts, we have 48 districts and well over 900 buildings out across our state that these folks will have to get a look at for us. It's very important for our future planning to have a good snapshot of where we are with respect to capacity, condition, suitability now. And so commend the bill to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Yes, Representative Summers, I see your hand up first.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Representative Walters, Chairman Walters, thank you for that. And Senator Landon, good to see my Wrangler partner over there. So always good to have you there. So my question is on the 6 million, realizing we've never done suitability, so there was no really way to estimate its cost, but certainly we know what past studies have cost. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever that was, a similar study was done, what was its cost?
Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, we'd have to get the exact number from state construction, but in working this bill over the interim, it was right in this approximate neighborhood. This is slightly inflation adjusted, but it was right in that $5 to $6 million range the last time this study was done. And the work on the suitability side has happened over the last year in terms of creating an objective measure, an objective matrix to be able to do that. So now it's just a matter of walking through the school, and the consultant will already be there. It's a matter of checking a box, generically speaking, checking a box, evaluating a room. And so their time should not be increased by adding this suitability component when they're already there doing the capacity and the condition side of it. The time will be added on the tail end when they take the information back to the office and start to compile the data and run the calculations. There will be an increase in time, and that's why I started out saying the 6 million is somewhat of a educated guess, but it is an unknown, and as we won't know until we do an RFP on the matter, and hopefully we can keep to that number and keep our consultants right near that number.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Follow up. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, thank you. I guess, Mr. Chairman, my question then would be to school facilities, if they're out there in the ether world on this call or on this committee meeting, is what was the cost of the last study? And if they don't have that, maybe they could provide that in an email later, but I would like to know what that cost was. And for disclosure, I was on school facilities with these gentlemen as well as Speaker Harshman. I don't know if Representative Connolly, I don't think she was, but anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Donna, is there any way you can admit one or both of the folks from the Wyoming State Construction Department?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we will. I believe there are actually 3 people from the State Construction Department, and we will admit all 3 right now.
Okay. Looks like they're coming on board with us. I'm not sure who would like to take this question, but whichever one of the 3 of you, I see Mel has, at least he has his video on. Maybe he wants to take the question.
Mr. Chairman, Mel Muldrow, Interim Director, State Construction Department. I probably will hand this over to Laura or to Tanya, but just wanted to say that just as a opening comment about the cost of that, when we've done studies both on the construction management side and the school side, I believe that average, and again, I'll ask Laura or Tanya to jump in. I think the average for the study without the suitability was somewhere around 2 million, 2.5 million, something like that, for the category of capacity and condition. As we talked to our consultants, the consultants indicated that based on what they understood about what we wanted to survey for suitability, that number was going to be quite a bit higher. And one of the reasons is the number of categories attached to suitability are quite large, a lot larger than what you would do in normal condition and capacity. I think that number for suitability has components and then subcomponents to that come out or could be as much as about 150 different subcomponents to suitability when they start doing the survey. So, but with that, I would ask Administrator Hytrek if she had some additional comments to make on that. But
go ahead, please. I think you're muted. We still can't hear you. It doesn't show that you're muted, but we can see your mouth moving, but we can't hear you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I muted everything in preparation not to be talking. If she can't get on, we'll get those numbers for you and share that back with you. I think she had some comments. She might be able to run down the hall to my office and add some thoughts here in a second. But if you need to continue on, we can come back to that.
Well, we'll just hold up for a minute or two and see if how fast she can sprint down to your office. Oh,
yeah, she should be right here.
Okay.
I'll actually give her my chair. Once you get the chair, you got it.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure what's going on with my computer. I must have some button clicked. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tanya Heidrich with the State Construction Department. I'm the School Facilities Administrator. Mr. Muldrow is exactly right, Director Muldrow. The last study was approximately $2.1 million. It did not include educational suitability, as he noted, nor did it include security, which will also be assessed.
Okay. Representative Summers, it seems that you may be having problems that I'm getting a text message that they're having problems hearing you. Did you have another follow-up question, or does that answer your question?
Mr. Chairman, that answers my question. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. I don't know about the folks out there in the audience,
Nope,
but
I'm good. That is just what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
okay. And Representative Conley, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I too have a question regarding the money. I mean, in all honesty, doing the study, good information makes for good decisions. So it absolutely makes sense to me that a study like this get done. The price tag, though, is pretty hefty. And so I am curious about kind of further discussions about that dollar amount, and then also about the need to hire consultants for a year rather than bringing in, let's say, some engineering AWACS for a year, something along those lines, in order to address that pretty hefty price tag.
Representative Walters, do you want to attempt that, or do you want to hand it off?
Mr. Chairman, I think I would let state construction handle that as they would be the ones procuring the individuals or the firm to do this work.
Okay, maybe Tanya, are you ready to, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Representative Connolly. The price estimate was, well, we worked with FBA in coming up with that figure, and it's their estimate included a team of individuals for each aspect. They don't believe that they can have the same individuals assess building condition that would be qualified to look at security or look at educational suitability. Each one of those elements would require a different team of professionals to really take a look at that. You know, as we've discussed, and I'm sure as the committee discussed, this is a new endeavor for the State Construction Department to roll out educational suitability and include that in our assessment. So it's really unknown whether we could bring that in-house, but that's certainly something that we could explore if the committee, if that's the committee's will.
Could I add something?
And Mr. Muldrow also has a comment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, the other thing is too, when we're talking about an AWAC position, they're great if you're looking at for a year, but in this particular case, we're attempting to go out and do a study with multiple hundreds of facilities around the state. As you know, we're talking, I think with the charter schools, 54 different districts. I think with that in mind, if we look at all of those districts and try to accomplish that with one or two people, it just can't be done. When these guys go out in the field, they go out in the field in clusters of groups of people. There may be 3 or 4 or 5 people that may be heading out around the state. And the goal is to make sure that each building's being assessed exactly the same way. And so we want to make sure that we have a company that functions in that manner, that goes out and the assessments are absolutely done the same way, following the same guidelines, tracking the same documentation, making sure they're measuring space, looking at classroom sizes and all those things appropriately to make sure that the data that we put in the system, again, as you know, good data in, good data out. If we put in data that's sort of a hodgepodge of different people's thought processes, we're going to end up with bad data. So the consultant is really, we think, the best way to get good data for the legislature to make decisions. So.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Kathy? Representative Conley, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, not at this time.
Okay, Representative Nyman.
Just one curiosity question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to get my understanding here on who to thank first and how to address, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question would be, how do you guys normally do this? This would be put out for contracts for bid, I would have to assume, with that volume. And then you'll come back with a group of people that have bid on this. And so I guess the $6 million is the pool of money that you're going to pull from, with the intention and the hope to find the least cost and to save a bunch of that money and hope to put it back if we possibly can do that. Is that the normal protocol?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nyman, that's absolutely correct. What we'll do is we'll put this out on the street as a regular bid process. In the past, we've done that, and we usually will get 2 or 3 consulting groups that will bid on the process, and we'll follow the standard guidelines, of course, of the state, trying to, number one, hire somebody from inside the state. If we can't, then our option, if we don't get any bids from anybody inside the state, then we have to obviously go out and find somebody outside the state to do that work. But it is a bid process, absolutely.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. To follow up on that, and just from a process standpoint, Representative Nyman, so we, the legislature, would approve this bill, and just hypothetically, it passes the committee, it passes the House, passes the Senate, and the governor signs it. The money is then appropriated and ready to go, and it becomes the executive branch's job to administer it. And then if you'll read on page 2 there in section 2, it says these funds are only available for this purpose. Any unobligated and remaining funds shall revert back to this account. So if they're able to get a bid that comes in at $4.5 million, then that $1.5 million extra would come right back to the strategic investment program account. And so, but at that point, it is an executive branch function, and the state construction department would handle all of the RFP and all of the bid procurement and all of that. It does not come back to the legislature once they go out and look for or request proposals. The legislature can see who they were and work with the department, but it is the department's responsibility to handle it at that point. If that helps to further answer your question.
Does that answer your question, Representative? Okay, Representative Summers.
That's all.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And my question is for Mr. Muldrow. Mel, welcome, and thank you for all you do. My question is, so what happens if we budget 4 million or 5 million or 3 million and bids come in over that? Would you have to wait another year? Do you have any contingency money within school facilities that you could supplement a bid on, or are we stuck with this pool of money, or do we have other pools that we can supplement?
Go ahead, Mr. Muldrow.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Summers, good question. Really, the funds that we have, and I think Representative Walters made a comment that, we were, the fund that we used to be able to stash away money for 2 or 3 years to prepare for this sort of went away over the last 1 or 2 sessions, where we lost that funding being put in there. And so from that pool, we have no funds in there to cover this money. One of the things that we were looking at as we requested the 6 million, our first number actually was a little bit higher than that, and we sort of toned that down a little bit. But the issue is, if our goal is to really do a true assessment, we're going to have to look and see what we get. If we end up not getting the 6 million, and let's say we're only given $4 million and it comes in at 4.5 or 5 million or 5.5, we're going to have to stop for a second and put on hold and try to figure out what we can do. We surely don't have access to any funds to do it without this funding.
Okay, does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Representative Brown, Vice Chair Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is really for all 3 of you, both co-chairman and Mel. One of the things that I have heard through the process, especially through the school facilities process with Laramie County 1 in particular, has been the difference in evaluations on school buildings. And so what I have a concern on here is Laramie County 1 has gone out and they've hired their own consultants with state funding to go out and do their own assessments on school buildings. And so I'm wondering, I guess I've got like 3 loaded questions here, but the biggest one that I would have here is, are we reinventing the wheel with so many of these school districts that have already gone out there to try to prove their point that X school has got deficiencies in this area and I'm not getting representation on this? Or are we reinventing the wheel, or are we going to hold this as the gold standard and we're not going to allow any other type of these surveys or anything like that to be used in the future? What are we really doing here, and why are we doing this compared to what has already been done?
Representative Walters, do you want to try to field that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Brown. The way I would best describe it is this legislative study is the wheel. When the districts do it on their own, they do it trying to get an answer that they see favorable for what they're trying to request. And so they spend money out of their block grants and see that as a good use of their resources, and that's for them to decide. But the gold standard, as you put it, is the state's study. The state statute says they will be studied, that this study will take place, and this is how the School Facilities Commission makes their recommendations and goes about deciding what the capacity needs are within the state, what the condition needs are within the state, and now what the suitability needs will be within the state. When an individual district decides to go out and do their own study, they have chosen to do that on their own. And it really has no bearing on what the commission is deciding. The commission and all districts have the words just escaped me, but they have a long-term plan for their district, you might say. They work with the district, and the commission work together to develop that going forward. So it's not just a top-down approach. The district is very involved with the School Facilities Commission. And then the commission brings their recommendations to the select committee of legislators here that then forwards it on to the full body for the funding of the various projects that come out of these studies. So when an individual district takes it on their own, as I keep repeating, they have just chose to do that on their own. And I would say they have done it with a hope of trying to bolster their position within the commission, but it really has no bearing on the commission because this is the study that the state uses for all funding.
Okay.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
So I guess Chairman Walters on this, I guess I would ask, to your point, it is the school district's prerogative to go out and fund these studies. But my question is, I guess, twofold. Why would we be allowing them to do this with block grant money if we already have the study and the study's there? That should, in my opinion, should be the way that we handle this. But number 2, why is there such a discrepancy? Why do we have these discrepancies to the point that we're going to fund $6 million here? And I know of Laramie County 1 spending upwards of $1 million in other studies to bolster their position. Why do we have such discrepancies between the two of them?
Representative Walters, you want to try that again?
I'll give it a shot. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Representative Brown. I think this is coming from my perspective, is why do we allow it? We fund the districts and then let the local school boards make their decisions on how they choose to spend their money. And we like that local control. I like that local control. And so unless we want to start telling every local district what they can and can't do, which takes away the local control, then that becomes a whole different conversation beyond this. Why do they choose to do it? I can't answer that. Why the discrepancy is, I think it's based on the questions that are asked. It's no different than any other survey. You could ask the same group of people a variety of questions and get entirely different answers based on the way you ask the questions. So in statute, we have, and in rule through the School Facilities Commission, we have a designation of how many square feet a student in K through 3 will occupy within a school. And from 4th grade through 12th grade, how many square feet. And so then you take and go into a building and look at a room and you divide that by figure out the square feet, divide it and how many kids can fit in there based on that square footage. And so it's all a matter of how the questions are asked. And that's why I think when a district goes out and does it on their own, they ask the consultant to give them an answer to the questions they're asking. And that may not be the same. And if we allowed every district to do it independently, and they ended up using 10 or 15 different consultants or AWACS or however they did it, we would get such a wide variety of answers because there would be no consistency in the questions asked, in my opinion. And so by doing it on a statewide basis, having the state be the clearinghouse, if you will, for this information, then it creates that level playing field across all districts. And when you look at some of the smaller districts, they may not even have the extra funding capacity within their budgets to fund a study like this. And so a larger district could be funding a study every couple of years, and they would always have be at the front of the line for changes and for improvements, whereas a small district may never be able to conduct the study. Thus, they would never have any improvements available to them because they would have poor information coming in and poor information coming out because of that lack of financial capacity within the district. And so, as I started out saying, this study is the gold standard for the state. This is the wheel, and the districts are reinventing the wheel, not the other way around. That's how I would best answer it. And the word I was looking for a minute ago, and it came to me, is the districts work on a facility plan with the School Facilities Commission. And so every district has on record and on file with the commission their school facility plan or district facility plan. So everyone knows can plan ahead, look ahead, see what's going on, and there shouldn't be any major surprises popping up. Hopefully I did a better job that time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Landon, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that Chairman Walters, I thought, did a really good job. Representative Brown, just a couple more comments. Having been on the School Facilities Committee for quite some time now, and we have, through the years, often had disagreements with particular districts over what the commission and what the Select Committee on School Facilities has decided with regard to priorities and whatever. So I think anything the district can do to sell its case, more power to them. But as the chairman pointed out, ultimately we have to have a plan and the information in front of us that allows us to compare district to district, and to come to you in the legislature with a priority plan and a budget that reflects that. And so we always try to respect anything that the districts bring to us, but this allows us to have a statewide look at our fleet of school buildings out across the state. So hope that helps.
Thank you. Mr. Muldrow, did you have a comment that you'd like to make?
Mr. Chairman, I think Senator Landon and Representative Walters has really hit the nail on the head there and said exactly what I would have said. The only thing I was going to add was just the point about every district is treated exactly the same when this survey is done. They walk into every building, look at every building exactly the same. So if nothing else, you are absolutely getting the same apples to apples look at every facility and looking at it the same way. And again, to Representative Walters' point, the districts who have the money have the ability to go out and sort of get a separate survey done. But one of the things that we know in the department is that when we look at small districts and large districts, all of them are treated the same way. We run the numbers, we do the reports, we hand that to the commission. The commission gets a chance to look at it, go through the priority list based on how they score, and the districts get an opportunity to come in and talk about it and make their case if they don't necessarily agree with something or they think that something might have been missed and they want to talk about having the opportunity to share more information. They have the ability to do that to the commission or during the facility planning process, whichever comes last before we get to the priority points. But I think with that said, Representative Walters and Senator Landon had it right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Newsom, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about the fund that this money is coming from. So the SIPA account, Strategic Investment and Project Account. How much money is in there currently? Where does that money come from to get into that account? What account would have you used, and where did the money come to get in that account that you would have used had there been money there?
Representative Walters, do you want to take that one too?
I can. So school capital construction account is funded primarily through FMRs, state royalties, and then in the past year, 2 years ago it was, we took the SIPA account, Strategic Investment Projects account, and guaranteed 0.45% of that account towards school capital construction. Prior to that, for the last 20 years previous to that, it was all, or pretty much all, co-lease bonus money, as well as state royalties, up to 1/3 of state royalties. 2 years ago, we took that cap off so we could use the entire amount of state royalties.
Does that answer your question?
There was an $8 million cap, I should say. So it's still 1/3 of the state royalties, but the cap of $8 million was removed. So we can use that full 1/3.
Okay, thank you. Representative Newsom, does that answer your question?
How much, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much is in the SIPA account at this point? Do you know that?
Representative Walters?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes and no, it's a fluctuating amount. It depends if you're using the governor's profile on the budget or using the JAC profile on the budget. Using the JAC profile on the budget, there is, let me find my notes here. There's about 60 million in SIPA, I believe it is. If you use the governor's profile, he spends the entire SIPA account differently than the JAC has chose to do it during our budget markup. So that's why I say there's a little bit of a different number there. Either way, the budget is balanced following the JAC recommendations. So the money would be available in SIPA for this expenditure.
Okay, Senator Landon, you'd like to follow up there?
Chairman, thank you. Just to add to what the good chairman has talked about, I think that's one of the debates that we will be having over the next few weeks, Representative Newsom. As much work as primarily started in the House, you might remember that we have done some things to allow for monies to tip into the school capital construction account that did not exist before. You know, the tips from the SIPA account, the full state mineral royalties, for example, but that still doesn't reach the threshold that it needs to if we are going to continue to take care of our school buildings as we have in the past. And so we still have some work ahead of us, and we all need to be thinking about what we want to do with respect to major maintenance, to studies like this one. And so I just wanted to throw that out, that we all need to be thinking about where we go from here. To the tune of approximately, Mr. Chairman, you've served on the school facilities committee yourself, and you know that we have to spend in the neighborhood of 200 million per biennium to get the job done with respect to major maintenance and any of the projects that we feel are important enough that bubble to the top. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Conley, I believe you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for the co-chairs of the committee, and it's basically about timeliness and need for doing this study right now. It's $6 million. That's a lot of money right now, especially when we're talking about the enormous budget cuts that are coming through the JAC on all of our state agencies, and this is an ask. And so my question is, based on the reality that over, I'd say, the past 4 years, we have really slowed down school capital construction, if not all capital construction around the state. We have a good list of all of the priorities, the projects that need to be done. Those have been in existence for years now. We haven't gone through even the top third of that list at this point. And so again, my question is about the need for this study right now, when it's my understanding that we have a list that is a good list and that we can still be working through it over the next couple of years.
Representative Walters, I didn't see your hand go up there. I'm sure you maybe wanted to answer part of the last question from Representative Newsom, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up to Representative Newsom's question. There's about a little over 40 million in SIPA after the JAC actions, and I think I misspoke and said 60 million. It's a little over 40 million in the SIPA after the JAC actions. So that's my follow-up for Representative Newsom. To your question, Representative Connolly, timeliness and why spend this money now? We have an existing list is really your question. This is to update that existing list. What projects have been done, and are the next ones on the list really as needed as they were coming out of the previous list? As things change, if it's a school in a small district that is people are leaving that area, is there really the same needs that there were 5 years ago? Is there an expansion needed? Did the roof get fixed? All of those things change over time. And while yes, there's a list, that list needs some updating to make sure that it is still relevant. So to me, this is partially a cost savings measure, because if we don't have good information and we go spend money on projects to add a wing to a school, because 5 or 6 years ago when the study was done, there was a capacity issue and it's now came due on that list. But yet that district has had a significant change in student population. We're adding a wing to a district with a declining student population potentially. And so that is not spending dollars wisely either. And so this to me is a cost saving measure, because we get good new information to be able to evaluate the projects from and start working from on new information that is current.
Okay, thank you, Representative Connolly. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just, again, concerned about the timing, even given that explanation, when things are still so much in flux with, for example, the pandemic and regrettably some of the coal bankruptcies. It seems to me that waiting a couple of years to get some accurate information might make more sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think we need to keep in mind too that this bill will be re-referred to the Appropriations Committee, and I'm sure that they'll scrutinize pretty heavily what happens on the money side of that thing too. So we have to keep that in mind. I think Representative Nyman had your hand up a while ago. Do you still have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, actually, Representative Connolly kind of helped me understand a little bit better of some previous information, and just wondering how much consideration was given, to the age of the schools. I mean, there's been a lot of construction, from my understanding, in the past 10 years, and I would hope to believe that they took that into consideration when they came up with this amount. But if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I do have one question in regards to the estimated cost of finding the suitability portion of this. The old price was 2.1 million when we were looking at it. How did you come up with the suitability kind of a cost in there to estimate what that would kind of be in a $6 million figure? I'm just curious as to kind of what was the framework that was utilized to come up with kind of an additional, even with cost of living increase and all those things, an extra about 3.5 to 4 million in that price there. Just curious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'll answer a portion of that and then maybe ask Director Muldrow or Ms. Heitrick to answer the how they came up with that number. That was a number that was really provided to the committee, or a range of number was provided to the committee, and we picked somewhere in the middle of that range. But I would just offer, just really for the committee's own edification here, there's about 1,340 total school facilities within the state of Wyoming, totaling 27.8 million square feet approximately. Of that, approximately 392 of those buildings are schools themselves, or 23.5 million square feet. And of all of that, approximately 1/4 of it has been replaced in the last 15 to 18 years, with a 60-year life expectancy on all of those buildings. And so if you run the numbers, if you replace 1/4 of your inventory every 15 years with a 60-year life expectancy, it rolls over. And while it seems like there's been a tremendous amount of construction, it's really right where we need to be in terms of maintaining good quality school facilities throughout the state of Wyoming. And so I just offer that as a little bit of information to Representative Nyman as he was asking about the amount of construction that's taken place in the last several years. Like I said, it's been about 1/4 of the total square footage over the last 15 to 18 years, approximately. And so just wanted to offer that. And with that, I'd ask Director Muldrow, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, or Ms. Heitrick, to answer the question on how they came up with the increase from 2.1 million for the capacity condition to approximately 6 for the adding the suitability component.
Director Muldrow, would you like to answer that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to let Administrator Heitrick take that question.
Okay, did we get our audio fixed?
I thought she did, but she did not. So I think she's going to run back down the hall, but I will go back and have a conversation with you about it while she comes back down here. But so 2 things there. We again, using our one of our consultants, took a look at our costs from before and went back and had them do a study for us to see what they thought it would cost. We actually went out and studied a couple of buildings to get a sense of how much work that would be. Our facility planning manager went out with a consultant group, took a look around at a couple of schools, and sort of tried to survey to see how much work it would take to do the suitability portion of that, understanding that we already understood condition and capacity. And when they came back, they put some numbers to it, and that's how we sort of got the number to be able to come up with the number we have now. And again, one thing I don't want to lose track of is that, yeah, we're talking about and I think our budget person came back with 2.7, but for the last study, which was done in 2016. So understand, we're going back to do a whole new survey. So that doesn't change. So at best, the number we're talking about is roughly 6 million, and we're hoping to get it down lower, but that's about double what we think this process is going to take. And so we really do feel that 6 million is a good number. We're surely going to try to get the best number we can out of our consultant, whoever answers the RFP and gives us a bid. So again, the suitability is really a new process. It's gonna be the first time out of the chutes to do it. So it's gonna be a little bit. It's gonna be a lot of busy work to go through all the steps to make this happen. So so again, we feel like the number we have is in the ballpark there.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Heitrick, did you get your technical difficulties resolved? No?
Turn your mic up on your phone, maybe, Tanya. I think you're trying to do it through your telephone.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can hear you a little bit. If you get a little closer or speak up a little louder, we could hear you better, I think.
Okay, well, I apologize for having my phone, and I also apologize for the technical difficulties that started. I'm coming up with the
Tanya, get closer to the phone mic. We still can't hear you well.
You don't hold it up to your mouth. There we go.
Okay.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. And coming up with the number and I'm getting feedback now, so. And coming up with the $6 million appropriation request, we did work with FEA on that aspect. And in talking to Bill Small, he has an entire explanation that we can go ahead and send to the committee with regard to that. But in part, the large portion, approximately $2 million of the request, is in relation to the educational suitability piece. And to Representative or Chairman
Just barely hear you.
that is an element that the State Construction Department has not yet assessed. And so that will be a new aspect that will be utilized in prioritizing buildings that will come through the appropriation process and the statewide school remediation schedule.
Okay, we couldn't hear you very well, but we could hear you a little bit. Did you get enough out of that to get your question answered there, Representative Lyman?
No.
I didn't quite get all that. I don't know if you guys heard more of it than I did. Let me know what you heard, but I didn't get hardly any of that, quite honestly.
Well, again, I think we need to keep in mind that this will have to be referred to the Appropriations Committee, and that they will scrutinize the money side of that pretty heavily. And these folks are going to be in for another grilling on this issue before it gets very far.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee? I don't see any. I guess we could open it up to public comment then. Do we have anyone from the public who would like to comment? Donna, do you see anybody on there? Or?
Mr. Chairman, if you could instruct the attendees, if they would like to comment, excuse me, to please raise their hand on the Zoom platform, and we will admit them.
Their blue hand, their virtual hand, right?
A virtual hand.
Okay, if you are interested in testifying or asking a question on this particular thing, please raise your virtual hand, your blue hand, and let us know.
I am not seeing any hands. Carla, if you see hands that I don't see, please let us know.
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not see anybody requesting to speak.
Okay, thank you. What's your pleasure, committee?
Move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Brown moved the
Through it.
bill. Is there a second? Second from Representative Summers.
Let me get my mic off.
Okay, any further discussion from the committee? Comments? Yes, Representative Vice Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly see the value of this, and I appreciate the work of the Select Committee bringing this bill forward. I have some reservations about it, but it's not enough to cause me to vote no. But I certainly do have some reservations with some of the issues that have come up in the past with similar studies. And I mean, at this point, I feel like we continue to study just to study. And I do feel like we've got a lot of new square footage going on in the state. We've certainly added a lot of new schools, and I think this is a good snapshot. I think the $6 million price tag is a little hefty. I agree with Representative Connolly on that at a time when we're scrimping and saving. But I would also argue that that's exactly what the SIPA account is for. So I'm going to plug my nose and vote aye for this. I'd like to see this through to the actual session and have the discussion on the floor. But, you know, I would just say that I think that we're asking for a lot of money for a study right now. And there's a lot of places where we could use $6 million that would not go to consultants and getting studies. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will be voting aye, but I do appreciate the time.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chairman Brown. Yes, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have to say thank you, Representative Brown. Although I will go in the opposite direction and vote no, basically for the exact same reasons that you did, but I have now gone on that opposite end. Ultimately, this study should be done. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I just don't think it's timely right now. In terms of SIPA, SIPA is a statutorily constructed. It's a statutory account. We can move money to and from it. We established it, we can de-establish it, all of those kinds of things. It was honestly meant for economic development. And so honestly, this is a tough call, but I'd rather that $6 million be used elsewhere in the budget, and this can hold on a couple of years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Are you ready for the question? Does this require a roll call vote, or we just do it by hand? Does it require a roll call vote?
It's a roll call, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Donna, could you take the roll, please?
Okay, this is a roll call vote on House Bill 2. Representative Andrew.
No.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Connolly.
Representative Connolly, aye. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. If I may, Representative Connolly, no.
Go ahead.
Representative Connolly, no.
Yeah, and do say your name before you vote too, please.
Representative Harshman.
Aye.
Representative Nyman.
No.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative Summers.
Aye.
Chairman Paxton.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 6 yes, 3 no. The motion passes.
All right, thank you. And Representative Walters, are you going to carry this on the floor for us?
Mr. Chairman, I will be presenting this on the floor if you would like.
That would be great. Thank you very much. All right, looks like we are ready to move on to our next bill. Would you like to get us started on that, Representative Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trying to catch up with all the technology here, so I'm ready to go, I think.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
So, Mr. Chairman, before you now and committee members is House Bill number 5. This again comes from the Select Committee on School Facilities. And this really has 2 components to it. The first, in section 1, this is discussing how to pay for school construction, and really not construction, but the component level projects that come through our school construction budget if there is a shortage of funding. And it just says that the governor would be able to use his B11 authority to change that. And then in section 2, currently, and I should back up here for the newer members on the committee, the way major maintenance is funded for the schools in the state of Wyoming is based on a percentage of the cost replacement value, CRV. And so the consultants have studied our schools and know nationwide what it takes, what abuse a school takes, and really what they think a district, a state should spend to maintain their schools to get the longevity out of them. As we all know, we can drive our cars and never change the oil and never put new tires on them, but sooner or later we're driving on the wheels and the engine blows up, and that doesn't do us any good. And so there's a certain amount of maintenance required to get the longevity out of your vehicle. Same with a school building. There's a certain amount of maintenance that's required to get the expected longevity out of these buildings. And so that, as I said, is based on a CRV, percentage of CRV, cost replacement value. And so the consultants have studied it and feel that we should be at about 2.56% of CRV. That would get us the desired time frame that we hope that these buildings will stay functional and stay in good condition. We in the state have statutorily set that amount at 2% of CRV, knowing that we can't fund everything perfectly, and felt that that was adequate, but maybe not perfect. And so 2% of CRV is where we have been in the state for many years, many years. And so then within that 2%, we allow 10% of the 2% basically, or so that really it works out to be about 1.9% is used for maintenance, and we allow that other 0.10% or 10% of the two, to then be utilized for school safety and security items within the school. Because those items would not necessarily be maintenance items, but they would be school improvements for the purpose of safety and security. And so Section 2 says that they wouldn't be able or don't have to use that for safety and security needs as statutorily allowed. And so that's the two components of this bill. As I said, one is it's allowing the governor to use his B11 authority to adjust the projects that the legislature has approved, and the other is then to change that safety and security. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'd offer Senator Landon the opportunity to augment what I may have said, and then welcome any questions.
Go ahead, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I really don't have anything to add to this one. I think the chairman did a good job of hopefully helping everyone to understand what the bill does.
Okay, questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Overmuller.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Representative Walters, Chairman Walters. The Section 2, can you explain what that says in conjunction with the statute cite there? Your explanation before, I'm just trying to match up what you said about it to the way this reads and how those pieces fit together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd have to pull my statute book out to quote it exactly, but in 2115-109B, it allows for districts to spend that portion of, and it's approximately 0.10% of the 2%, on safety and security needs. And this says they won't be able to do that. Basically, it's saying the legislature and the school facilities or select committee feels that those dollars are better spent on actual maintenance needs of the school versus safety and security improvements of the school.
Okay.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
Yeah, follow up. Are these terms, Chairman Walters, are the terms facility safety and security needs, are they? I mean, if you define those rather broadly, it seems unfortunate, I guess, that they wouldn't be able to meet a need in this area under this part of this bill. So I'm just curious as to what the thinking there was to eliminate spending on safety and security in a period where safety and security is kind of at the top of the heap of the subjects we're at least are on our minds in a lot of ways, right? If you could address that, Chairman Walters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great question, Representative Overmuller. What this is really referring to is the ability to use those major maintenance dollars for safety and security needs. And so if we should be at 2.56 to maintain our buildings to get the longevity, and we've already as a legislature moved that down to 2, and then if we move it down to 1.9 because we allowed 0.10 of that to go for safety and security needs, we are starting to get behind the 8 ball in terms of the true maintenance that's needed on these buildings to get the longevity. Now, the other component is all of these schools and all of these districts and through their facility plans are eligible, and many do apply for component level projects to address those safety and security needs. And so maybe a school needs a vestibule or a single point of entry or certain items like that. And so there is another way that districts and schools can go about receiving state funds to address their security and safety needs within the process, and many of them do. This was just an added component because there were districts that had multiple new schools, didn't have, this sounds poor to say, but some of them could use, had their major maintenance well taken care of, well in hand, and they maybe had a little extra money, and this allowed them to use those funds in a very beneficial way towards those schools. It wasn't always used, and this was just an opportunity. It wasn't necessarily a mandate to do it. And so this section just simply says that through the period and ending in June 30th of 2022, they would not be able to use these particular major maintenance dollars for those safety and security needs. It does not mean that they can't do safety and security other ways. It's just these major maintenance dollars. Hopefully I was able to explain that a little bit better, Representative Obermuller.
No, thank you, Chairman Walters, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to follow up on Representative Obermuller's question because we are getting emails from folks about this very particular sentence and limitation. And I am just curious if major maintenance money can be used at all for safety and security. And if the answer is yes, then would it be appropriate to kind of, instead of just having this broad prohibition, to say on additional school building and facility safety and security? So it would mean that a school couldn't simply go out and get something new that it doesn't already have. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If this bill were to not advance, they could spend this money on those safety and security needs as the facility plan dictates, as the district working with the commission have came up with a plan of attack, you might say, on how to best utilize their dollars. If this were to pass, that would be restricted for the next year and a half, 2 years roughly. Is it a wise idea? I'm not necessarily in favor of this particular section or what they're working on here, but the will of the committee was that this was a good bill and should move forward in our select school committee.
Follow up, Representative Connolly.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Walters, would it be a compromise to insert the word new before school building and facility safety and security needs on page 2, line 14? Do you think that would help or just muddle the situation?
Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, my 2 cents would be, I think it would muddle the situation because so many schools have some safety and security measures in place. And so defining what would be considered new, if it's a different video system that enhances what they already have, would that be considered new or an enhancement on the existing? And so I think it would create some more nuances for sure. Quite honestly, I think eliminating the entire section would probably be a better option than trying to wordsmith what's in place.
Thank you.
Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Chairman Walters. I couple questions really why you just wouldn't make amendments to this really in the budget. And then I think the problem really that I have with it is on line 13 there on page 2, and I'm just reading this. It says a district shall not expend any funds distributed under 2115-109B. So, and all of our schools now are built with these systems. So if something goes bad, you can't spend any funds to maintenance it. And I think, we've reached this deal because to allow 10% with approval of the department, right? Districts can't just take 10%. They have to have approval of the state construction department to do any of this. Really, it was a cost saving measure to bring, because the initial bill on security measures in our schools was like shocking. And we thought, geez, we don't have the money to do this. 5-6 years ago, we thought, well, let's just start chipping away at it, allow districts, because, big part of this is locking mechanisms, entrances into buildings, those kind of things are the biggest parts, and allow districts to do that. So my first question is really, why not just do this in the budget? You guys just had your budget hearings. And secondly was really this piece of any funds on line 13. So anyway, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Harshman, I share your same concern with that language. This bill came from the committee. The committee was trying to figure out ways to reduce the overall school capital construction budget. And I should clarify to the committee, when I say capital construction, it doesn't necessarily mean building new schools. It means renovating schools. It means truly building them, which limited amount of that is taking place. But it also means putting on a new roof, installing a new HVAC system, tearing down an old school that is costing the state money. All of those things come under the umbrella of school capital construction. So don't think because we say school capital construction that it's necessarily a new building that's being constructed. It is all of those components. It is all of the different pieces of a school, a new set of windows because the old ones are drafty and costing tremendous amounts of money to heat a building, and all of those sorts of things. And so, as I said, that's the umbrella of school capital construction. And so the committee was looking at various ways to try and reduce the overall school capital construction budget. And these were a couple items. Section 2 regarding the safety and security was a way the committee hoped to make sure that the longevity of the buildings could be addressed by making sure all of those major maintenance dollars were pointed to major maintenance and not diverted. Although I think Speaker Harshman or Representative Harshman had a great point in that many of these items serve two purposes. They're a safety and security matter as well as a building maintenance issue. And so there is certainly some problems with this section of the bill. And to your question, Representative Harshman, why it wasn't addressed in the budget bill, this select school committee met in October and forwarded it out of the committee. And so it's here before us today. It could certainly be handled through the appropriations committee and the supplemental budget bill as well. But the select school facilities committee had taken this action and forwarded it on prior to any action by JAC.
Mr. Chairman?
Is Vice Chairman Brown, I think Chairman Paxton's video is frozen.
Looks frozen to me.
How, I don't see Vice Chairman Brown. Is he here? How about Majority Floor Leader Summers? Can you go ahead and take over the chair of the meeting? I think it goes in that order.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Former Speaker, I'll take a run at it. But I guess first I do have a question. And obviously I was on school facilities, Chairman Walters, and I do support this section actually. And when I go in and look at 2115-109B, all that is a section in statutes that references major maintenance money. And so really the reason this was put in there is because we had considered shaving down the amount of money provided to school major maintenance, the percentage. In the end, I think we did not do that. Is that correct, Chairman Walters?
Mr. Chairman, and Representative Summers is the acting chairman. Yes, there was a discussion to move that 2% of CRV down to 1.75% of CRV. That ultimately did not pass through the committee, and this bill was really kind of a compromise of that whole discussion of moving from 2% to 1.75.
Correct. This was just an attempt, as I recall, to make sure during this period of money crunch that we put more money into major maintenance and not into safety and security or other things. Frankly, I wish enhancements was in here. We spend major maintenance money on enhancements. I don't think that should happen either, but we didn't go down that track. So to move along, does anybody, oh, there's their chairman is back. Chairman Paxton, are you able to? Your mute is on.
I think we had an electrical surge or something happened here. Anyway, I lost everybody for a bit.
So I pass the baton back to you because your vice chair was gone too.
Oh, we were both gone at the same time. Huh? Well, okay. Well, I'm not sure where we are, so.
Lost everything. I couldn't do anything, guys. I'm so sorry.
Well, and I had the same issue can happen to me at the same time, I guess. Just electrical glitch of some kind. So where are we,
So, Mr.
Representative?
Chairman, I think all the questions were answered and we're still on the same bill and just taking questions of the chairman.
Okay. Any further discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Representative Walters.
I don't know if Tanya or Director Muldrow would like to comment on this. I think if they do, this would be a good opportunity.
Okay. Sounds good. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's been a good discussion. Neither the administrator or myself have any further comments on it.
Okay, thank you. What's your pleasure, committee?
Mr. Chairman, move the bill.
I didn't see who did that. Was that you, Vice Chairman Brown? Did you move the bill?
Is there any public comment?
Oh, that's right. We got to do public comment first,
I
don't
didn't
we?
know.
We do have public comment. Is there anyone?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am bringing one person in, Kim Nelson.
Okay. Ms. Nelson, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can't see, but I can hear you.
Okay. We are taking public comment. Do you have any comment that you'd like to make at this time? There you are. We see you now.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I do. I was very involved in listening when the select committee started this bill, and I feel like there's been a misunderstanding here as to what their intent was. In 2020, they added a small caveat, a footnote to a previous bill in which they allowed an additional a portion of major maintenance, 10%, much as the enhancements work, not a new 10%, but just a portion of that 10% to add new security and safety measures. What their intent, I believe, was that they just wanted to rescind that. It originally went through June of 2022. They just wanted to rescind that. The language in this bill, though, it does do what you guys have been talking about, removing any use of major maintenance for any security or safety need. And that's going way too far. I mean, that would disallow us. We wouldn't be able to do something as simple as fix a heaving sidewalk, fix a trip hazard, replace a handrail. I mean, all of those, nothing can come from major maintenance. And obviously none of those are going to qualify for any kind of component project. And there's also the understanding that component projects are funded 2 to 3 years in advance. For security, I mean, it is integral to our buildings to be able to fix and maintain our manual locks, our electronic locks, our video surveillance, our visitor management systems without major maintenance being allowed to use on any of that was always in the pot for major maintenance. We've always been able to use major maintenance for that. The language of this bill would prevent that as well. I urge you to go back and reconsider. I think the best measure would be simply to rescind the footnote that they had enacted last year. And that would get rid of that additional 10% to add new components, but would preserve our ability to maintain our systems as they currently are.
Ms. Nelson, I don't believe you introduced yourself. Would you introduce yourself for us, please, and tell us who you represent?
I apologize. I'm very passionate about this. Kim Nelson, I'm the facilities manager for Laramie County School District number 2. We are the very small district on the east side of Laramie County, for which this kind of money is crucial to our ability to manage our safety and security features.
Okay, I think Representative Conley had her hand up, I believe, first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Ms. Nelson, I'm not sure that we have, or certainly not in this bill, the ability to go back to that footnote. But I am curious about the suggestion that I had to Chairman Walters about adding the word new. before school building and facility safety and security needs on page 2, line 14. Would that take care of the issue that you're talking about of buckled sidewalks, things like that? That's not new. So that would allow for the funding to be used.
Go ahead, Ms. Nelson.
Representative Connolly, I do feel like that would be helpful. I actually have been in touch through various authorities who assured me that the lawyers also thought this was poorly worded, but didn't have a means of going about and fixing it until it came forward for this. If at all possible, I would ask that you ask a member from the LSO to weigh in as to what would be the best means of correcting it.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Brown, I think I saw your hand up also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Nelson, just curiosity, based off of your testimony, I would kind of question, do you think this bill should just have the language tweaked better compared to what you're attempting to get done here? Or do we need to rework the entire process here? I feel like the School Facilities Commission, like you said, and based off of the emails that we've received, it sounds to me like the intent was different than what actually came through. So, you know, if I'm looking at it from your shoes, how would you recommend us move forward on this? Would this be some language definition changes in the bill itself, or you know, basically kill this bill and start fresh?
Representative Brown, in my humble opinion, it would be better to kill the bill and start over fresh. I think there needs to be some input back from Select Committee. I really don't feel like it was their intent for it to be interpreted as we cannot spend any major maintenance on safety and security needs. I don't think that's in line with their wishes. I feel like you'd be better off starting over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Does that answer your question, Representative Brown? I guess the other possibility is that if we think that this bill has some merit, we could table the bill and let LSO work on it and see if it's worth pursuing, or what's your pleasure, whatever you'd like to do. Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, you know, I supported the idea of not using major maintenance money for additional new safety and security, and I don't like it being used for enhancements either. But is this bill really necessary at this time? No. I think we kept the same 2% for major maintenance. We didn't reduce the money, so there wasn't a constriction on that money, and probably not a need to have this percentage change, or to have this bill in place now. And section 1 is really a nothing section in my opinion. It gives the governor some flexibility, but it's really, I don't think it does much. I think we could kill the bill and not lose any sleep over it, frankly.
Okay, any other comments from anyone else on the committee? Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I guess I would just ask the chairman of the select committee, based off the emails and based off the testimony that we just heard, and also what Representative Summers just said, you know, what's the feeling from the chairman? Is this something that the select committee feels very strongly about, and that we should maybe try to fix this, or is this something that we can readdress at a later date?
Go ahead, Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak for the committee. I would just say that it was a 6-4 vote, so a very close vote in the committee to move it to this stage of the game.
All right, Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I really have appreciated the discussion. I think you can see that this little bill reflects a lot of conversation that we had over the interim with regard to major maintenance. And I think what the select committee was trying to do is drill down to really zero in on this notion of, let's not get back to the 1980s and 1990s when Wyoming got away from taking care of its buildings. And the next generation inherited this several $billion deficit in deferred maintenance costs and buildings that weren't up to snuff. And so that was just this a reflection of a desire to remind all of our other legislative friends that we have this major maintenance dollar that needs to be spent wisely. That said, I think that a couple of your committee members have really zeroed in on a problem with the bill, and I think we can come at it in several different ways, and we maybe don't even need the legislation. Thank you.
Okay, comments from the committee? What's your pleasure? Anyone like to move the bill? I guess it dies for lack of a motion. Is that correct? All right. Well, I have a request that we take a short break. So I'm going to ask us to take about a 10-minute break, which would bring us back at about, 22 after or something like that. Is that appropriate? And we're asking you to shut off to mute your video and your mic, please.
Thank you, Chairman Paxton, for the time today, and members of the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, it looks like maybe we're ready to resume. Hopefully everybody will be back on board here shortly. Looks like we're still missing Representative Nyman. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Our next bill for our consideration is House Bill 62. That's suicide prevention. And is anyone from the any returning member of the committee willing to present this? Can I put you on the spot, Kathy, and ask you to present the bill?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, my.
No warning at all. What? That's what you get from a rookie chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, what you see before you is a very short bill that requires that a school district include, and in particular within its health and safety, information about suicide prevention instruction. While this might not seem controversial, there are two elements that I would say that were controversial in the discussions that happened. One was, in particular, that we are requiring, you'll notice that it says shall rather than may, right there. And so it is a requirement that it does happen. We have other elements in our statutes where it is a may, which means that a district can choose to include or not include. And we felt that it was important enough that a district does include it. And the reason being is that the best practices and the most current information says that it's not simply the training of teachers and administrators in schools, but it's actually that children will tell other children first about kind of suicidal ideation. And having only teachers and administrators know about how to respond adequately isn't good enough. We heard probably some of the most compelling testimony was from kids themselves who talked about how they found out before anyone else that one of their peers was considering suicide, and they didn't know what to do about it. So what this bill does, and it's named after Jason Flatt, is simply require that within the health and safety curriculum that there is a curriculum that is age appropriate and best practices for suicide prevention to children. Mr. Chairman, I hope I did well enough on the fly there and would certainly welcome anybody else from the committee.
Representative Conley, you did an excellent job, I believe, of doing that, much better than I would have done. I think I saw a hand from Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, whenever you want questions, if Representative Brown, Vice Chair Brown wants to provide more detail, fine, but I just have a question.
Okay, Vice Chair Brown, would you like to weigh in?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think Minority Floor Leader Connolly did an excellent job as well. I would just say that what the testimony was that we heard during the interim was we have the Jason Flatt Act and we have funds available in the Jason Flatt Act out there right now. The request was to utilize those funds that are out there to teach this program. So therefore, it wasn't quite necessarily an unfunded mandate, if you will. That there would actually be some funding to this program. However, you know, we did hear, and I have heard some pushback on this, exactly what Representative Connolly or Minority Floor Leader Connolly did say. There is some pushback on whether or not the money is enough and what this actually does. And I'd say the biggest contention was a may versus shall, and whether or not, you know, if we don't have anything in statute that says shall, it may not actually get done. So that was really the nexus of the discussion over the course of probably an hour and a half. But yes, the testimony from children explaining the necessity of this bill was quite powerful. But with that, I will help, Minority Floor Leader Connolly field any questions that we may have as this bill gets brought forward.
Okay, thank you, Representative Brown. Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And my question is either for committee members or somebody in WDE if they're in the waiting room to answer questions. And that is, I guess this is my question and my concern, is this is placed in the basket of goods. In other words, in lines 10 through 12, this is put into health and safety program required under the statute that is the basket of goods. And therefore, with that, I would assume comes the requirement to create standards and perhaps standards in every grade. I don't know what that involves. So what I want to understand is by placing this requirement within the basket, what is that going to require as far as standards and subsequent curriculum based on standards? It already has in here in a later part that it's curriculum really based upon stuff that's that superintendent of public instruction will make suitable suicide prevention materials ready. So it does that, and it talks about the training later. But I want to know if this is going to require standards to be promulgated, because that's seems like a bridge too far.
Okay, thank you, Representative Summers. Donna, do we have anyone in the waiting room that from the State Department of Education that would like to weigh in on that question? You see anyone there?
Mr. Chairman, I don't see anyone in the waiting room from the Wyoming Department of Education, nor do I see anyone with their hands up. But if you would like to instruct, I'm sorry, hands are going up right now. Would you like us to admit attendees who would like to comment?
Yes, I would, please.
Okay. Carla, if you could admit the first attendee.
Looks like Janine might be on the firing line. Hello, Janine. How are you today?
Good, Mr. Chair. It's been a long time, and I so don't like having to see you this way. I wish we could be in person, but thank you for admitting me. I have basically the same concerns that Representative Summers or Majority Floor Leader Summers has, is that putting this in the basket of goods, I believe, will require the development of standards and a lot more than where we are today. Keep in mind, I know my district, for example, we do follow the Jason Flatt Act. We do have our staff trained. We do have this integrated into our health and PE curriculum. And don't lose sight of the fact of the Safe to Tell program that we're paying for as a state, which would help assist with this as well. I truly appreciate all the passion and all the work that has gone in, from the folks in Cody, but I would prefer that we continue on my district continues on the path that it's on, where they are already doing this, and not specify a specific program and put this back into the basket of goods. Thank you.
Okay, Janine, I'd like to know if there's anyone in the waiting room that would like to clarify whether or not we do need to move this into the basket of goods. Is there anyone out there that has an answer for us on that particular issue?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Representative Brown.
Donna, if you can admit Kari Eakins, she should be out there with WDE. It sounds like she would probably be able to answer the question for us directly.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, I just, at the same time you were talking, received an email from Kari asking for the meeting link. I will send that to her. In the meantime, would you like us to admit another attendee who has their hand up?
I think we probably better wait for Kari to get us straightened out on this before we move too much further. So we'll have a short pause here while we're waiting for her to get on board.
I'll get her that link right now.
I just think that maybe pausing right now until we get an answer from Kari might save us some time later. So I hope you don't mind us having this brief pause.
Mr. Chairman, here she comes.
All right. Kari, can you hear us? There you are. I see you.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and I'm assuming you heard the question and are prepared to give us an answer. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I am Kari Akins, the Chief Policy Officer at the Wyoming Department of Education. And I believe the question came from Representative Summers about what adding the suicide prevention to the basket of goods. And I believe in this bill, it adds it specifically to the health and safety portion of the basket of goods, which is part of the Common Core of Knowledge. And so this would mean that specifically suicide prevention would be added to our health standards. It does so happen that through the timeline approved by our State Board of Education, a review committee is currently meeting to review those standards and see if any updates are necessary. So if this bill were to pass, then we would go ahead and have that committee look at making those updates during this cycle. So we would hold on making that. I don't believe the committee will be ready to make a recommendation to the state board any earlier than late spring or this summer. So, you know, there is potential depending on how, you know, the extent of changes that the committee would recommend to the state board, then that would, you know, that may slightly delay the process, but we're talking about just a couple of months of sending that recommendation to the state board most likely. And then as in with any standards change, school districts would be given 3 school years from the time the rules promulgation is signed by the governor to implement those changes into their district assessment system.
Okay, thank you, Kari. Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Kari, thanks for popping on, you know, on such short notice. We really appreciate it. So you create standards, they implement 3 years, they implement curriculum, and then you have to be tested on that as well. You got to, you know, you got to be tested on standards. And so I guess my question back to you and WDE, as you thought about this bill, is there a way to do a requirement, but not hook it into the basket, hook it into standards? In other words, could we disconnect that piece? Maybe require it to be taught, but not to go through the hoops of standards and then curriculum based on those standards, and then, you know, then have an assessment based on that, all of that. So tell me what our options are here if we wanted to do something but not go this far.
Go ahead, Kari.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Representative Summers. So generally, I will say that where there are requirements that are outside of the basket, most review committees do end up preferring to work those into the standards if it's statutorily required, just so that it's more straightforward for teachers, that they're only having to look at one resource as far as what they are required to be teaching in the classroom. So it's not as confusing. They aren't having to know the standards and have to know our law books in order to make sure they're teaching everything that they're supposed to be teach. So I would say if this committee or if the legislature did decide to go in another direction of making this a requirement outside of the basket, I just personally would not be surprised if the review committee went ahead and decided that incorporating it into standards was the easiest way to communicate to educators that they need to be incorporating this into their curriculum. And honestly, technically, anything that a teacher decides to teach to their class is their curriculum. It's what they're teaching. And so I don't know that, off the top of my head, I don't know that there is really much out there that wouldn't result necessarily in the standards, but I can say that this current review committee has had discussions about whether it might be appropriate to add suicide prevention into the current health standards. And I know that even where they're looking at potentially adding them in, they are wanting to do that with minimal changes to those standards. And I would also just like to remind this committee that an assessment is not always a test. It is just a way for a teacher to be informed about whether the student has been properly instructed and has actually learned what they're supposed to learn. So that can be through a classroom discussion, that can be through maybe a written paper, it can be through just observation of a student, it can be a teacher assessing that student. And so even if it's part of a district's formal assessment system, it can still be based on things other than per se a paper and pencil test. And I would assume that most assessment of this standard would be through more observation discussion to make sure that the students were actually engaged in receiving the instruction, not so much on them having to do, physical representations or demonstrations that they've learned this. And really, there's nothing within, there's typically nothing really within the standards, especially in health and the physical education and a lot of the fine and performing arts standards, that requires how they have to be assessed. And there are usually many options for how educators can assess those standards. It really is just the teacher saying, how do I need to know that they have heard what I've been telling them? It's not necessarily a formal test that is required if it's part of the standards.
Okay, Representative Summers, follow up.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate it. So Kari, let me get this straight. So I think if we did nothing, right, let's just say we did nothing, the State Board of Education, they could make a determination that they feel that this is important enough to put in that standard that's being developed anyway, correct, maybe? And as well as this committee could make it, the committee that's reviewing the standard right now could make that recommendation to the state board, who then could make that decision. So it's not like, I mean, if we want this done as a legislature, then yes, we can do it. But it's also going to be looked at by other eyes. Is that not correct? There's other avenues.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
To Representative Summers. Yes, you are correct. Obviously, if the message comes from the legislature, then it seems to be received by more than if it is simply from a recommendation per se from the department or from the state board. So I think it is just completely up to this body on how strong of a message they would like to send on how important they believe this is for students to be learning. And really what this legislation is doing is basically saying to the state board, you must include this in the standards.
Okay. Representative Summers, do you have any follow-ups? Or are you okay? Okay, anyone else from the committee? Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Chairman, and Ms. Seekins, thanks for joining us. Just maybe you could give us, the committee, just some examples where the legislature has required certain standards be applied to content areas. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kari.
Representative Harshman. So one big example would be what we refer to as Indian Education for All, where there was required to be a review of the social studies standards to include Native American history, culture, and contemporary contributions. Another example would be and this is also in the social studies area, regarding instruction on the Wyoming and United States Constitution. And so that is a requirement that is actually outside of, specifically being listed in the Common Core of Knowledge and Skills. However, the standards review committees include that directly in those social studies standards. Another example of a requirement, I guess that kind of, a requirement that's somewhat outside of the standards would be the K2 foreign language. And so there are foreign language standards that can be used for that instruction. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Kari. Representative Harshman, is that any follow-up to that, or are you okay? Okay. Anyone else from the committee? Yes, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I also kind of echo Representative Somers' concerns in the fact that I've had several conversations, even in the last couple of days here, in regards to the amount of interaction between outside interests that have been contracting and working with the district and working here and even in Cook County And the lady I visited with was from QPR, a question persuading the refer, and they're evidently, according to what she shared with me, funded through the Wyoming Department of Health, and they're across the state. And so, and they do this. They go and they, I mean, we're already spending state funds on this and offering these opportunities and trainings for educators and going to schools and helping people learn and understand it. But she basically gave me to be able to identify people, to be able to give teachers and educators the training that they need to be able to reach out to these kids, ask the questions that they need to be asked. And so I guess my question is too, when we're looking at a situation where I've been asked by a lot of educators, we don't mind you asking us to, to take a cut. It's just don't ask us to do more and take a cut, And so my question is in this then is if we have opportunities and there's already entities out there that are working with communities of faith, districts, these entities that are already working through the Department of Health to get this training to educators and into the school districts and to reach out to these people that need this help desperately, but nobody's going to question the need and the necessity for this understanding of the impact of suicide. I mean, Wyoming it's devastating in the state. But my question would be also, we're also realizing that we've got a money issue, and we've got people on the ground right now that are working their rear ends off to try to reach out to these people to get the help to these young people and these families that need this type of intervention and understanding. So I guess my attitude at this point would be let these people do what they're doing, encourage them. And I echo Representative Sommer's thoughts. If there was some way that we could get these school districts, and I don't even know of any that probably aren't working with these folks, and if they aren't working with them, encourage them to do so, because there's already funds out there subsidizing and supporting these groups that are working very diligently to offer these services. So I'd like to see that promoted more so than adding this to the basket of goods. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kari. I'm not sure you can answer that question, but if you'd like to comment on it or answer it, you're welcome to do so.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's just a good summary of the debate before this committee today.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone else on the committee? Well, I know this is a highly emotionally charged issue, and I know we have some folks waiting in the waiting room to comment on that. And so there are no more comments from the committee. I'd like to open it up to the public for comments. So Donna, if you could just start down the line and see, I know there's probably a bunch of blue hands up. So if you could just start down through the line and we'll take them as they come, I guess.
I believe Carla is admitting the first attendee who wants to comment.
Okay. This must be Paula. Are you our first candidate?
Can everyone hear me and see me?
We can hear you and we can see you. So go ahead. Introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from.
Thank you, Chairman Paxton and Chairman Scott and the Joint Education Committee for allowing me the opportunity to testify in favor of the Jason Flat Act Amendment. My name is Paula Medina, and I'm a junior at Cody High School, and I'm here as the Secretary of the Student Body and as a member of FBLA, Model UN, and Robotics to speak on behalf of these clubs. The student body has shown great support for this amendment. We got 80 signatures in the first 2 hours of a petition in favor of the bill being sent out. But more than that, I'm also here to share my personal experience with suicide and the major reasons as to why I'm advocating for this. 3 of my closest friends attempted to commit suicide and have talked to me about it during the act and the time leading up to it. It's a very nerve-wracking process to know that if you say the wrong thing, you will never see your friends again, that if you make the wrong choice, they'll just be gone. I never felt like I was given the necessary tools to help my friends, to truly talk to them and to stop them from harming themselves. I'm sure that if I had the training, I would have dealt with the situation better than stumbling on my words and hoping that one phone call or one text will allow me to see them again. And when I say training, I don't mean the small lessons we've received during health class. At the time, I had already gone through the suicide section of our health class, and none of that was truly helpful. I wasn't a trained professional, and nor was my health teacher. I needed the tools and the knowledge that a trained professional could have given me. It's truly horrible and anxiety-heavy experience to go through, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Passing the Jason Flat Act Amendment would give me, my peers, and future students the right tools to save their friends. For that, I asked the committee to pass the bill.
Well done, Paula. Thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Conley.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Medina. You did a phenomenal job. I'm curious about the petition that you sent around. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and the signatories?
Yes, thank you, Representative Connolly. It was 2 hours before we knew we had to testify again in front of the Joint Education Committee the first time we testified. So I drafted a petition saying that the students would support the Jason Flat Act Amendment. So I went to the library and to the mall, and I talked to the students and told them what this bill was about. And people that said yes would just sign it and would happy to help. They were very excited to know about the prospect of this program being put into the schools.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Follow up?
No, and just thank you, and thank you for sharing your personal experience, and I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Other questions from the committee? Okay, I know we have lots of people in the waiting room. Thank you, Paula, and we'll move on to our next person. Looks like maybe Hollis Hackman. Can you hear us, Hollis?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman. I don't see my picture, but that's okay. I don't need to see myself.
You can push the button that's on the. I think your video is muted. If you push the video button, it should. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dr. Hollis Hackman. I'm with the Wyoming Psychological Association. I know there's a lot of folks that want to provide testimony, so I'm going to try to be very brief. My organization rises in support of this amendment, and the thrust of our support is behind the data about suicide rates in Wyoming. The CDC just released the most recent data from 2019, and we're back in the #1 spot, which is twice the national average. And the numbers of suicides in the state have been going up for the last couple years. It was 147 in 2018. It was 170 in 2019. And we heard the governor mention this in his State of the State speech, and I wrote it down. I think he said it was 190 suicide deaths since the pandemic. Further, Wyoming health rankings from 2020 indicate that suicide was the leading cause of death in Wyoming for ages 15 to 24. So we have a very significant problem. And I appreciate Representative Nyman's comments about, well, people are working hard on this. That's true, but we don't know that all school districts are working on this. In fact, and I may be stealing some thunder here for some other folks that can elaborate, but we tried to gauge how many school districts were actually doing something with any kind of evidence-based programming, and it's in the order of about 25%. So there may be a lot of good things going on, but there needs to be a lot more happening to address this public health issue, in our opinion. And so having said that, and not wanting to take more time from other folks that might provide testimony, I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hackman. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Hackman? Looks like we're going to let you off the hook, Dr. Hackman. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, who do we have up next? Looks like Donna Burkholz, is that correct?
Yes.
There you go, Donna. We got you now. Will you introduce yourself and tell us who you represent, please?
Yes. Chairman Paxton and members of the committee, I am Donna Burkholz. I'm a resident of Sheridan, Wyoming, and I'm a member of the board for Wyoming's chapter of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I rise in support of this bill. Besides what I've already told you, I'm the mother of 2 girls. One is in the 8th grade and one is a junior in high school. Both of them have had conversations about suicide with friends who were struggling. And the way they knew how to handle those conversations is because I had talked with them from my own knowledge base. And I'd given them the tools to be able to recognize that they had a friend in trouble so that they could reach out to them and resolve that situation positively. And it may not have gone that well if they hadn't had me as a mom. If they, one of the things that kids do is they talk about these things with each other, far more than they talk about it with adults. It's kind of a developmental thing about them at that age, I think, as a mother. So by knowing what to do because of my conversation with them, they were able to help their friends. Years ago, I had a friend in high school who died by suicide. I didn't know the signs. I didn't know how to help him. Our community didn't know how to react. And the bottom line is that evidence-based interventions are what are going to make the difference in reducing the suicide rate here in Wyoming. If we give these tools to kids through their schoolwork, those are life skills that they'll be able to apply going forward and long after they've left school. So I really think this is a good bill to get through, and it's going to make a really positive difference in the lives of youth and in families all over our state, both in the short and long term.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burkholz. Any questions from the committee? Doesn't look like it. Thank you for your testimony, and I think we'll move on to our next person.
Thank you for your time.
Looks like Hannah Blasco, if I pronounced the name correctly. Hannah.
Yes,
There
hello.
you are. There you are.
Hi.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us who you represent?
Okay. Hi, my name is Hannah Blasco. I'm a senior at Cody High School, and I'm speaking here today on behalf of the speech and debate team at my school, and also on behalf of personal experiences. In May of 2019, I lost my little brother to suicide. His name was Drew Blasco. I'm here to speak partly on behalf of Drew, but also hopefully to speak on behalf of the students that have lost a loved one to suicide and have not had the chance to have their voices heard. Wyoming is a leading state for suicide rates in America, and it pains me to think about the fact that my brother has become one of the people that have contributed to this, and that he's merely become another statistic. If I can help to prevent a single person from feeling the way that I feel now, I would gladly do this testimony 1,000 times over. I can guarantee that hundreds, if not thousands, of Wyoming students are grappling with the thought of suicide and suicidal thoughts, and they don't know what to do. Or they're grappling with trying to help somebody else with not trying to help them not commit suicide, and they don't have the proper and necessary tools to be able to do that. Teenagers simply are not being given the proper tools to learn how to help their peers, and we clearly need it desperately. I hope that today I can ask you to hear us, the students, because we need you to, or nothing is going to change. I'm here to ask you to create a change because clearly what we've been doing is not working. We do have health programs at our school, we have Safe to Tell, but suicide rates are rising every single year. So clearly something isn't happening that needs to be happening. Something has to change or suicide rates will continue to rise and more Wyoming teenagers like my brother will become statistics, and I just don't want to see that happen. So I ask you, the board, to please vote in favor of this bill. Thank you, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, Hannah. Well done. Any questions from the committee? Doesn't look like there are any questions. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
I think we're ready for our next person. Looks like Daniel Casaboon, I believe that's how you pronounce your name. Can you hear us? Daniel, are you on?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Daniel. Do you have your video muted? If you want to unmute the video, we'll be able to see you. There you go. Now we can see you. So please introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent.
Thank you, Chair Paxton and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Casavoon. I am the school psychologist at Cody High School. I am here to stand in favor of passing the Jason Flat Act amendment as well. As you've heard, the suicide statistics keep rising. We are on the front lines of that and battling it every day, doing the very best that we can. However, without the students being trained properly, we're fighting this public health issue with one hand tied behind our back. As you heard before, there's plenty of studies to show that when kids are thinking about suicide or actively pursuing the act, they are not talking to adults, they're talking to each other. And the students don't know how to react. They are not mental health professionals. And no one's really talking them and training them on how to get the right help in order to prevent the suicide from happening. Now, I can tell you just within the first 7 days of coming back from the pandemic here at Cody High School, we conducted 22 suicide risk evaluations. And again, we really need the students to be trained so that as these kids are out in the community, as they're in their classroom, school hallways, that someone has taught them how to spot the signs that their peers are showing, and then most importantly, how to get the right help. And so that's why I'm really coming before the committee to really ask you to pass this bill. I do want to comment on what the good member Summers was talking about, and we are not asking for this for standards to be created at all. In fact, I think it's probably better that process is divorced from what we're asking to do. What we're asking for is that it is required that school districts are required to provide evidence-based suicide prevention programs, such as QPR, such as signs of suicide, such as sources of strength. They do exist, they are out there, and that is separate from teaching this in a health class. That is not an evidence-based measure, but those other programs are. And if the committee was to go ahead and put this bill forward, what it would do is create an issue for the high schools. And naturally, we are going to lean towards some of the prevention specialists that are already out in our communities and already funded. And we're going to build coalitions and relationships with them to get them into our high schools and start training these kids, grades 6 through 12, so that when it does come up, the kids are prepared and know how to garner the help that's needed. And the vision for this really is 5, 10, 20 years down the line, as our kids move through our educational systems and graduate, they're going to have the proper training and then go to UW, Northwest College, other schools, LCCC, things like that, go out into the workforce communities and know how to deal with this thing, with these things as grown-ups. See, so it's not just about school, it's about educating our citizens the correct way so that 5, 10, 20 years down the line, our citizenry has the proper training to then begin to have an impact on these horrible, horrible statistics that we've had for decades now. The other thing with passing the bill forward would do is it's going to coordinate all of the legislative efforts that are already out there and are good. But if we require the training in the schools, again, separate from a health class, what we're going to do then is things like Safe to Tell, the Wyoming suicide hotline that's been just created. We're going to now have, I think we have 94,000 kids in our school system. And if you count the kids grades 6 through 12, let's just say it's 40,000. We're immediately going to have 40,000 kids educated about the Wyoming suicide hotline, right? The $8 million that's already been allocated for suicide prevention, now we're going to spread that money out and just make better use of the money that's already spent. because these kids come to school every single day. And now we have this opportunity to train them properly through an evidence-based program separate from a health class. So we really are asking you to go ahead and consider that when you consider passing this bill, and we are in favor of it. And with that, I would just like to thank the chairperson and the committee for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cassaboom. Questions, Representative Summers?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Daniel, thank you for your testimony. So a question I have is, you talk about programs and the bill talks about instruction, and I'm not a teacher, right? And I'm not in a district. And so I don't know, is there a difference? So to me, a program would mean something different than just flat out instruction. So tell me what you're talking about. Is it the same? Are the two words synonymous?
No, sorry. Thank you for the question. But no, those two words are not synonymous, and that's not how I'm thinking about it, nor that was also not our intent when we put the bill forward. Our intent was to put a program, to require an evidence-based program, because these programs have been studied scientifically and have been shown to reduce the number of suicides that occur and increase the number of appropriate referrals that are made by kids when their peers and friends tell them that they are suicidal. So that's what we're referring to. That's separate and completely different than quote unquote instruction that you might receive in a health class from a health teacher. Those are two completely different things. And what we're advocating for is the program, and have that be separate from creating standards and all those other things, which isn't a bad thing, but that's not necessarily with what we wanted to happen with the bill moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Yes, Vice Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've actually got, I think, probably 3 or maybe 4 questions for Mr. Cassaboom. The first one that I would ask is, what's stopping you as a school district right now from inputting a suicide prevention program? And so another way to ask that exact same question is, do we really need this law to go through the process in order to get suicide prevention going through your school and or any other school districts?
Yes, thank you for the question, Representative Brown. I would say the answer to that is yes, we do need this legislation. As you heard from Dr. Hackman, we sent out a survey. There's only about 20% of the schools doing anything directly with the students. And if we don't do something different, we're going to keep getting the same statistics that we have had for decades now. And so, yes, I do think the legislation really is necessary. And the things that prevent us from doing it is, well, right now it's COVID. We're not having the professionals come into the school right now because they've been told that they shouldn't by the public health officials. But barring that, they will come in. The other thing that's preventing, I think, a lot of schools is what I've learned in the 8 years of being in education is it's very, very difficult to change the culture or a focus of a school. And if it's not required, there's so many other things that a school has to get done that if it's not required, it just simply gets put to the side. Because logically, we should be doing this, but most aren't.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so actually, Mr. Cassaboom, you gave me a perfect segue. And this is actually the question that I have been fielding the most in my district, especially and within my school district as well. But you mentioned how much is already on teachers' plates and requirement, the term requirement. And this is yet again another requirement that we would be adding to these teachers' plates. And so I would be asking you, how much discussion has been had with your staff beyond yourself and counselors, but more directly, how much discussion has been had with the instruction facility or faculty within your area and throughout the state, and whether or not they have time to teach something like this?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yes, thank you for the question. That's an excellent question and a very legitimate concern. And so the answer to that is yes, lots of discussion has been had with the teachers. And what the teachers say is they will gladly give up their time, because when we're talking about an evidence-based program, it's not teacher dependent. We're having someone like a mental health professional or a certified trainer come into the school system, where the only thing that's really required from the teacher in terms of their time is that they be there and give up. And again, for this, I'm talking about QPR specifically, question, persuade, respond. So they have to give up one period to allow the trainer to come in. And the only thing that's required of the teacher is that they be present while the conversation happens. So it really doesn't steal that much instructional time from them. If, again, specifically talking about QPR, there's other programs out there that, again, it's not teacher run, it's run by either a mental health professional, counselor, or someone from the outside coming in. The other response that I would have to that is when a suicide does occur, unfortunately, and it has happened here, is it steals so much instructional time in the aftermath of dealing with the suicide. And I'm talking about hours, weeks, and months, because it just rocks the school's world. And all of the students, whether they were personal friends with that student or not, there's not much learning going on, and it does steal the instructional time. And you have to get all the counselors in the school to respond to that. And they're seeing a vast majority of the student body who are upset. And I can tell you assuredly, talk about stealing instructional time. And that pattern holds steady until the time of the funeral, where kids just are not concentrated, nor are the teachers, quite frankly, on their studies. They're doing the best they can. But in the emotional state, the emotional aftermath of a suicide, it's very difficult to get back on track and start learning and start teaching. And again, that pattern kind of holds true until the time of the funeral. And then it increases when the funeral's held, and then it gets better over time. But then as you deal with the holidays, the anniversary of the loss of that person's birthday, the anniversary of the date when it happened, those things, again, steal instructional time from the teachers and from the kids. And we're going to save a lot more instructional time for the teachers to prevent it in the first place than reacting to it like we have been. So that would be my answer for that.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Yes.
Want to proceed? Anything else, Representative Brown? Okay. Anyone else on the committee? Yes, Representative Overmiller. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Kassim-Boone. There's, for many of us, there's a spiritual component here. And as a secular institution, that becomes an issue of how you address an issue like that does have a spiritual component. And I was wondering how you deal with that part of this issue, and how you draw the faith community into this process. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Kassim-Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Overmiller, for the question. And that's, I would say that's taken on a case-by-case basis. In terms of the programs, the evidence-based programs that exist that we're advocating for, it depends on the individual student, their willingness to, and how much of a spiritual aspect they want to deal with within that program. But I would say that the programs that are out there, the spiritual component isn't necessarily explicit. Now, again, going with the aftermath of when a suicide happens, I've counseled many students, and there is a spiritual aspect, and they do open up about that. And I am completely open to having those discussions with those kids. But as far as the programs that are out there, in terms of, I would say it's non-religious, quite frankly. And you're really just dealing with facts and information in terms of, one, how to identify the signs of suicide, and two, how to react to it and garner help and support for your friend if they're thinking or acting in specific ways.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Representative?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, anyone else? Questions? Yes, Representative Conley first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Casaboon, for your, I mean, honestly, for your passion and your concern for the kids, and honestly, the kids that you have mentored. And so, and I hate to do this to you, but I'm now confused about your testimony. It seems like you very much want this bill to go forward, is what you said, but then you explicitly said you don't want the training in a health and safety program, which is the first sentence of the bill. And so now I'm a bit confused about what it is that you're advocating for as it relates to the bill and the very specific kind of language in the bill, if you can help us out there.
Yes, and thank you for the question, Representative Conley. And I see your confusion, because I was confused too when the committee started first talking about it, because again, going back to the original thought process in terms of moving the bill forward, and what we wanted from the bill is we were not necessarily advocating that this be taught in a health and safety or taught in health class. Okay, what we are advocating and hoping to make mandatory is that school districts in Wyoming provide evidence-based suicide prevention training, because there are lots of programs out there that have, when they're given to students, okay, either by a mental health professional or someone who's certified and trained, that it reduces the number of suicides and increases the number of appropriate referrals. And that is something very, very separate from creating educational state standards for learning in a classroom in terms of teaching it in a health class.
Mr. Chairman, a follow-up?
Follow-up?
So Mr. Casaboon, we talked to the policy director from the WDE, Ms. Kari Akins, and asked her a kind of comparable question. And the answer is that for the most part, in the statutes, what we do is really just related to kind of curriculum. And we don't have someplace else that says that you must do a certain kind of assembly, for example. We don't have that in the statute. So I'm curious, though, if you can think of in your own school environment, what kinds of things that you do that are outside of the standards and how to make them obligatory across all districts. Or else we're going to end up with, honestly, what you said is 20% of the districts do it, the other 80% don't. It seems to me we either have to put it in a course, a curriculum, or it becomes optional.
Go ahead, Mr. Casaboon.
Yes, thank you for the question, Representative Connolly. And yes, that is a conundrum, and how to get the work done. And how to make it happen in terms of language. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure what specific language to put in there to make evidence-based suicide prevention training mandatory in a school system. So yes, I honestly don't have a great answer for you on that one.
Okay, follow up, Representative Conley. Okay, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to offer some information to Representative Obermuller, when I visited with my folks over here in Hewlett and in Cook County, as far as the faith portion of it, QPR has pastors that are trained in this identification and going in and working with that. So there is an element of that QPR is working with the districts, and there is pastoral leadership that is actually becoming trained and going into the schools to train off of that training as well. So there's a pretty broad-based amount of community support in this and involvement that is going to give, evidently, and very fortunately in my particular area, we do have spiritual leaders here that are offering their services, training with QPR, and offering those services to the district and being involved in that respect. So it's pretty multi-pronged, and I can appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Casaboon. It is, that was my concern, is we're going to try to put it in there and teach it as a curriculum, but we've got folks out here that are trained in evidence-based responses to this, and to be able to get that kind of training to our educators and then to the children. And like they said, we're being funded right now. We can come in a couple-hour training, really help people get over a lot of the hang-ups that they have with asking young people, how are you doing? What's going on? Are you considering hurting yourself? And she said it's a training that we go through, and we work side by side with those educators and really bring a much deeper understanding of the complexities of suicide and give these folks some desperately needed, as he said, and I can't emphasize it enough, evidence-based training that is real working examples that work on the ground where they're at and the situations they're facing. So just a little bit of information for those. So thank you.
Mr. Casaboon, do you have a comment on that at all, or?
Chairman Paxton, thank you. And thank you for the comment. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And imagine if every single school district was doing exactly that. I truly believe that the suicide rates would go down, especially over the years, through generations, as the kids learn how to deal with these things properly, and then graduate from our institutions and then raise families out in the communities and in their workplaces. So thank you for the comment. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Casaboon. And Mr. Casaboon, thank you for answering so many of our questions. I appreciate your time. I have a question about the effectiveness of implementing this at a state level. I don't question the effectiveness of any evidence-based program, but I've had a hard time finding evidence that any state has been able to mitigate this problem by mandating it at a state level. And I'm wondering if you could provide us any evidence or information on that topic.
Go ahead, Mr. Casaboon.
Thank you. Thank you again for the question. And I've not read any studies. The literature that I review really focuses on the programs themselves and the effect sizes that they create when they're implemented with fidelity. In terms of reading literature about the effect size through a mandate on a state level, I couldn't tell you. The reasoning would be that if it comes through on the state level and then requires the schools to do it, then once the schools do the evidence-based program, we should get the same effect sizes if it's done with fidelity.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the committee? It looks like you're off the hook there, Daniel. Thank you very much for your testimony. Donna, do we have anyone else in the waiting room? Like
yes, we have 3 other people wanting to testify. Carla just admitted Andy Somerville of WAMSAC.
Okay. Andy, go ahead. We can see you. Introduce yourself, please. Tell us who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize. I'm doing double duty with the Senate Education Committee, who's discussing mental health bills related today as well. Andy Somerville representing WAMSAC, which is the Association for Mental Health and Substance Abuse Providers. That's all your community mental health centers. We provide a variety of services, including prevention and including treating people who are having suicidal thoughts or depression or other mental health issues. This is an issue near and dear to our hearts because we kind of see it on the ground. A number of our centers already work with a few school districts in some capacity to provide some training and some services to the school districts. And I won't repeat what my colleague Hollis Hackman had to say about our suicide concerns and the suicide crisis we have here in the state, but I did want to let the committee know 2 things. We support suicide prevention education in the school districts in whatever form that can be in. It is beyond my expertise on whether that should be required in standards or if that should be through another directive, but we stand ready and willing to help with anything that we can to continue suicide prevention education. I wanted to reference a program that some of you may have heard. It's been increasingly gaining traction through our federal government, SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Agency. It's called Mental Health First Aid. It's a program that a number of our centers run. They do have programs specifically for teens. And again, that's something that we have trainers in our community mental health centers and are willing to partner. And I would just close as well with adding that the 988 hotline, or I'm sorry, the Suicide Lifeline hotline will be transforming. We stood up our call center in August. It's run by one of our community mental health centers, Central Wyoming Counseling. That number will be transforming to a 3-digit 988 number by July of 2022. And we see this again as just another point of education to help everybody realize what resources they have. And we want to make sure that we can get that to everybody of all ages. So with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee for Ms. Somerville? I don't see any. I think you're off the hook also. Okay, our next testimony would be coming from Ann Perkins, it looks like. Ann, can you hear us?
I can hear you. And can you see me? You can't see me yet.
You have to unmute your video.
I think I'm coming. Not sure why that's not working. Let me.
There, something's happening. There you are.
Thank you.
Welcome to the committee. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you represent.
Thank you, Chairman Paxton. My name is Ann Perkins. I am the community specialist for Sheridan County. I am the prevention specialist for Sheridan County, and all of the counties in the state have prevention specialists. And I just wanted to actually just offer some education regarding this bill. I have been working with Dr. Hackman and Dr. Casaboon on this bill, and I just wanted to stand for questions if there are any. I am very blessed in Sheridan County in that I do work with all 3 of my school districts to provide suicide prevention training. In District 2, which is Sheridan, our 9th graders do get QPR, question, persuade, and refer in their health class. So all of our 9th graders through Sheridan District 2 are trained in that program. And then in District 1 and District 2, we also have a program, an evidence-based program called Sources of Strength. And this is a program that prevention specialists across the state are working on. It's in Weston County right now. It's starting in Fremont County. Other counties are looking at this. And this is a program that really is a peer-led program. There are adult advisors, but it's really to teach those peers their skills, how to interact with their peers, and how to be that upstream prevention so that they can change the culture, and so that if there is an issue, we can definitely address it before something happens. And I'm happy to stand for questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Perkins. Any questions from the committee? Go ahead, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Perkins, as far as your understanding of what's going on around the state, what is your feel on, from your perspective, and what you're offering as far as response with other districts around the state? Do you have any understanding of that in your chats and visits with your constituents or with your coworkers?
I do, and some of us prevention specialists are working very closely. And again, like other people who have testified today have talked about, there are a lot of different options. The mental health first aid, I know the Sheridan Police Department is just putting on one of those for their police officers. We do have a safety resource officer who does that for our community members as well. But I would say I also have heard from my prevention specialist colleagues that there are some districts that are not doing any suicide prevention, and that they are not really open or, wanting to have that relationship with the prevention specialist. And as someone mentioned before, the money for the prevention specialist, you've already legislated that to each of the counties. And so we're here and we're really eager to work with our school districts, with our communities, and that money has to be spent in suicide prevention. So to me, it's a really amazing melding of the work that you've already done in legislating that money and then what can be done. The other thing I think that's really important to mention is that by teaching suicide prevention, what we are also doing is we are taking away the stigma. So much of suicide prevention is about removing the silence that surrounds suicide. All of us here, all of you on this committee today can probably say you know someone close to you or someone that has died by suicide. And so again, we obviously are in the #1 spot again in 2019, which is not the top 10 we want to be in, not the #1 spot we want to be in. And so really by educating our students, by giving them those skills and those tools, we can help reduce that stigma and we can help open those conversations to our students and to their families.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, what in your opinion, Ms. Perkins, could we do to create more of that opportunity to get those relationships built with districts that are not currently utilizing these opportunities that are out there that are already paid for? I mean, do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have an opinion on what could be done to encourage these folks to take an active interest in what's going on and take advantage of what's out there?
Go ahead, Ms. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nyman. That's a good question. I would say part of it is just time. It's, building those relationships. It does take time. And I do see what Representative Conley and Representative Brown are saying, and that maybe, is legislating this the best way to do it? But sometimes we do have to be told, yes, you have to do this. And again, what I think is interesting and helpful is that there is money out there for suicide prevention in every county. So, when we talk about the financial hit that the education, the schools are going to take, this wouldn't be affected by that because that money is already there.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the committee? Thank you, Ms. Perkins.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all your work.
You bet. Looks like Lindsay is up yet next. Seminio, is that how you pronounce your last name or close to it?
Semino, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Would you introduce yourself? Tell us who you represent, please.
Absolutely. My name is Lindsay Semino. I represent the Wyoming Counseling Association. I am here to speak in adamant favor for this bill. We are incredibly excited to see that suicide prevention and mental health education is going to be introduced to teachers at the state level. We are excited for a number of reasons. The first is normalization. We believe that bringing any kind of mental health discussion into the classroom normalizes mental health, normalizes that discussion, not just for the teachers, but also for a generation. By normalizing it, you are decreasing any type of stigma, and by decreasing that stigma, you are bringing that into the public. And by bringing it into the public, then you do statistically will bring down things such as suicide rate, such as symptoms that we see with depression and anxiety for the Gen Z and the generation that is coming up after them. So we are very excited for that. Secondly, what we are seeing from our professionals is the best way that we can describe it is whispers. And by whispers, what we see is when what we experience from our professionals who work within the school district is when there are budgetary cuts required or being asked of the school district. Many times, the first thing to go is support services. Many times those support services happen with counseling, social work, things that would be considered mental health, career counseling. So by giving teachers this suicide prevention It gives them another toolbox to see what they should be looking for within their student if for some reason they are in a district where those support services were cut due to the strain that the state of Wyoming is in. So that is another reason why we are excited about this. Finally, forgive me, I am also working the Senate Labor Health Committee with Andy, and we switched places very abruptly given where both of you guys are at. It's been quite a day. But finally, we're just incredibly excited because of the, again, that normalization piece is incredibly appropriate, or incredibly important. And it really comes down to the fact, a lot of what was talked about today was, is this going to be helpful to legislate this? And for us on the behavioral health lobbyist side, it's a very foreign thing to talk about, because a lot of what we talk about from the behavioral health lobbyist side, we're legislating behavioral health all day. And we're doing it on a state mandated scale. And then we see the outcomes, and we're seeing that happen, and we see how it benefits the state. So as far as, can we legislate this and see an outcome? Yes, that will happen. But also, well, can that happen within education? Also, yes. Mental health on an educational level will eventually, in the next 10 years, become just as integrated as physical health, will come just as though integrated as math, as science, and as biology. So though it seems weird to legislate it on a state level now within the educational system, because it is new and because it is foreign, the reality is that mental health is going to become a basic level subject, and something that we are wanting our children within the K-12 school system to become familiar with and to become self-aware. And we're wanting our teachers to become self-aware with that as well. And so on that note, I stand for questions, but we do stand in the affirmative with this bill, and I ask that you do as well.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. It looks like we have a question from Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Simoneau. You're actually doing quadruple duty. I saw you this morning in the labor health meeting, and so it's quite the day for you.
Yes.
But I'd just like to make clear, this bill is not about training teachers. In fact, we passed a bill for professional development for training teachers back in 2013. That's already in statutes. That's already required of professional development. In part, this bill came about because teachers like a Mr. Casabun came back and basically said, yeah, this was fine for us, but we're not the ones that are getting the messages quick enough. It's the children who are getting the messages. And the kids don't know what to do. And so this bill is about, in the way that it's written now, it's about mandating that evidence-based suicide prevention get taught to children in an age-appropriate way. And so I'm curious if you've got some evidence that you can talk about in terms of, honestly giving this information to kids, and not necessarily via teachers, but in part maybe through some of these community programs that we're hearing about.
Absolutely. Whew. Yes. There's so many different ways. And as far as giving it to kiddos are asking for it. And so for you guys to be able to give it through these different ways, through the preventative specialist who was on through Ann Perkins earlier, the preventative specialist who was on right before me, they are able to structurally do this in age appropriate ways for middle school, for high school, even for kiddos in that 4th through 6th grade way. I know that seems young, but the reality is that kiddos from that tween up are able to identify these factors and see it in each other, and they are able to share that lingo. Now, anybody, when we get into that kindergarten age, they know the lingo. They're not quite knowing what that means. But that is able to be taught in those community factors and within those programs and be effective, especially for those kids. And so these trainings that you guys are speaking of today with the specialists or with the preventative specialists absolutely can be handed down from the kiddos and be used within the classrooms.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the committee have any questions for Lindsay? Okay, thank you for your testimony, Lindsay. I think we're ready to move on. Do we have anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, I don't see anyone else in the waiting room with their hand up. So I think that was all the public comment.
Okay, we will close public comment. And what's your pleasure, committee? Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move the bill.
Move the bill by Representative Conley, seconded by Representative Newsom. Okay, we're open for discussion on the committee. Yes, Representative Summers.
So, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. I can anyway.
You know, this is a topic, you know how I get emotional sometimes. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I lost a cousin this spring to suicide. Not a child, not a young child, but it's still it's a very important topic for this state and whether it's for in schools or wherever it's at, because we do have to turn around somehow our suicide rate in Wyoming. I do think there's some really good work being done at local levels by these prevention specialists. We have a rock star in our community that engages the faith community, and they've formed a council, and they go around and they do these trainings, and I think they've done an amazing job. And so, you know, I'm gonna, when the time is right, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna offer an amendment to this bill. I don't like dumping more on teachers, and I don't like the way the bill was written, particularly by putting it in the basket of goods and making it part of the instruction. And so I will bring an amendment at the appropriate time. I'm not sure it fixes the bill, but it's the best I could think of and not just kill the bill. And I don't know whether this bill lives or falls is not going to be, I think, reflective of how all of us on this committee feel about this issue. Every one of us has this story to tell. And so I think it's important that we keep this issue alive, regardless of whether we keep this particular bill alive, because it is very important. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Well, I think that's what a lot of us are struggling with is this really the mechanism to get to where we want to be? And I'm not certain either. Other comments or questions from the committee? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would echo almost identical sentiments, but one thing that I think is apparent is we are facing an extraordinary amount of shortage of time in the classroom. The teachers that I have heard from constantly over the past 4 years, even in this committee, let alone the ones that live in my district, when I knock on their doors and talk to them, or when they message me or call me, they just don't have the time. And I strongly feel like we are placing too much of a burden of society to be on these teachers. These teachers did not go to college to teach suicide prevention and teach financial literacy and these types of things. They went to school to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. And that's what we teach them in college. And I feel like placing these societal issues on their shoulders and telling the teachers that this is their job to fix and this is their jobs to watch over is concerning to me. And it's not so much that the teachers are going to be teaching this, but we're taking away classroom time from them teaching. And I understand that this is not the teachers teaching this. So I'm very concerned that we're taking away more and more time from these teachers. Again, I really thank Representative Summers for the comments that this is certainly not when I cast my vote, this is not a vote denouncing my non-support for suicide prevention or anything along those lines. I can tell you I've lost, from my freshman year of high school until my senior year of high school, I lost 13 friends to suicide. So I know a thing or two about suicides. I just don't think this is the mechanism to do it. And I think our teachers have spoken loud and clear on that in the past. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Overmuller. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the comments of Representative Brown. I take a little bit different view of it. If I thought there was another mechanism, if I thought that churches were equipped to do it, if I thought families were equipped to do it, I would want to go that direction. But the reality is, in our society, the school is the place that has the most interaction with the kids. This is a program to reach out to the kids. If those programs if the community is reaching in and the faith-based organizations are reaching into the school and these programs, I don't see any other alternatives. And this particular problem, to me, has to rise to the top of how we try to reach out to our kids. We've all been impacted by this. I've had friends that have lost children in this environment. So I will be in favor of this bill. I'll be interested to hear Representative Summers' amendment. It may be similar to mine. So I'll let him present his first and then see where it goes from there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I believe I saw Representative Conley's hand up. Is that correct? No? Yes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree very much with Representative Obermuller that we passed a bill 8 years ago, that has professional development for teachers, right? That was one step. And we heard from teachers that it wasn't enough because they understood that it was the kids that were getting those messages first. The kids were, not parents, not pastors, it was kids. I can't think of a better thing for us to obligate being taught in school other than how to respond. I mean, my goodness, I could give you a half a dozen elements to take off of teachers' plates rather than this one here. We also heard, and we all know it's true, that when there's a suicide in a school, all teaching stops, all learning stops. Everyone in that building needs to be taking care of each other and the most vulnerable among them. So the thought that it's not efficient, I think, is just wrong as well. And so I too join with those who am concerned about the concern regarding standards. But that being said, I don't think that should stop us from moving this along in one form or another. We can fix that as time goes on. I want to hear those amendments as well, but I would urge us to pass this along. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Harshman, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think there's none of us are against training or instruction. Nobody here is. I mean, and I think, we're moving down this path where we're doing a better job. Remember in appropriations a few years ago, we cleaned up that whole Safe to Tell program, switched it, moved it around, saved money, and made a better program. We have teacher training now, so important. When I first started in the teaching business 35 years ago, boy, you never talked about it. You didn't want to, that was the deal. You just never talked about it because you didn't want to give anybody the idea that, of even thinking about suicide and how far we've come now and how things have changed. And I think, so I just want to say this, I don't like the idea of the legislature. I mean, our Constitution says we don't buy textbooks, right? We don't prescribe statewide curriculum, those kind of things. And those are up to local districts. So I always get nervous of the Indian Education Act, as a legislative cram down, or K through 3 foreign language. We did all those. I probably supported all those. And I think, so I think there's got to be a way to kind of do this. But I would say this, schools will adapt. I mean, schools will adapt. And schools have adapted to homeless kids. Schools have adapted to kids with tremendous disabilities, mental, physical, social. Schools have adapted and will continue to adapt. And so I don't think you'll hear one teacher across the state say, boy, I just can't do that. Or this isn't important. I think it's our challenge. You know, how do we get the county prevention specialists involved? I mean, we shouldn't have silos, right? We shouldn't have these people we just heard from being siloed out of the school building. So, you know, we provide all this safety training to kids. We teach them how to get on and off school buses in emergencies, teach them how to evacuate in a fire drill and bomb drills, now active shooter drills, right? And how to run and avoid and barricade and do all those things. So schools will adapt. I just think we're going to have to decide what's the best way to really get kids to talk about this, to make sure it doesn't happen. Because most of it, geez, if you've ever heard somebody speak who actually survived suicide, oh my goodness. And unfortunately, many of these kids, there's no going back. So I think that's our challenge. And I don't know if this bill's the right way. I'm probably going to support it. I think it could take a few amendments, but I think I just want people who are out there listening that I'm looking at the 9 of you. I know all of us, we're all on the same page on this issue. And we just got to try to forge ahead and find the right way and the Wyoming way to do this. So anyway, so we'll figure it out eventually as it goes through the process. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other? Yes, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and I guess the only thing for me is sometimes I think when we do dump it in or kind of put the school in a position where they're kind of the cure-all end-all a lot of times, my only concern would be, and it was kind of brought forward in quite a bit of the testimony, is that a lot of times people will take a step back. Well, hey, the school's taking care of that. And so we really don't have to put as much emphasis on it. A lot of times even the churches will pull back. A lot of these different institutions will pull back because it's already being talked about in the school. And so that I look forward to these amendments. I want to see this go. I do. I support this. This is the number one thing that's battling our young people in Wyoming. That was obvious from testimony. But I don't want to do something here, is my concern, that it's going to kind of take away the impetus of the locals and those that have got an ability to be able to give a multi-pronged approach to this, because it takes a community to reach out to these kids, and they're not just in school all day. They go home and they go to their churches, they go to their community meetings and things like that. And so my only concern is I'm concerned that once the school gets it, then everybody will kind of let the school take care of it. And a lot of the things have happened that way. So I support it, but I support it contingent upon these amendments, because I kind of get the feeling these guys are kind of maybe feeling that same way. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other comments, questions from anyone else? Well, maybe Representative Summers, we're ready to hear your amendment.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I would move this amendment, and I'll walk you through where I'm changing it, and then I'll read it in its changed, in the whole section in its changed manner. And so, Mr. Chairman, if you go in on page 1, line 10, Mr. Chairman, I would strike out the word include and put in the word provide. And then, Mr. Chairman, on line 11, I would strike the word instruction and put in the word programs. And then, Mr. Chairman, I would put a period after the word programs, and I would strike the balance of line 11. And Mr. Chairman, on line 12, I would strike the balance of the line to the period. So that period would slide over to by programs. And then, Mr. Chairman, the rest of my amendments on page 1 are strictly conforming language. So everywhere there's the word instruction, I put in the word programs. So on line 13, instruction goes to programs. Line 15, instruction goes to programs. Line 16, instruction goes to programs. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not saying that this is the be-all, end-all amendment. It's the best I could figure. And so, Mr. Chairman, as I read this now, it would be the school district shall provide suicide prevention programs. The school district shall provide programs under this subsection in an appropriate manner, which may include age-appropriate evidence-based programs on suicide prevention, provided that program shall be consistent with the suicide prevention education materials provided under that statute, which is goes into the superintendent of public instruction statute. And basically, she is responsible for providing suitable suicide prevention material. And then that training under that 2021-3, which is under Board of Trustees duties to actually provide that education to teachers. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be my amendment.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, seconded by Representative Overmuller. And let me remind you that for any of our amendments that we bring, we'd like to have you present that in writing to our secretary so that they can get that if this happens to pass. Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Discussion on the amendment? Yes, Representative Harshman.
Yeah, I think, I see what you're trying to do, Representative Summers, and I think, and I'm still, I don't know if I support it or not. I think what I would like us to somehow get to is that we're somehow pulling in all these resources. It still kind of has this school kind of silo in my mind, the way you've, I get what you've done. You've taken it out of the, the standards piece and the health program, but I don't know. So I don't know if this is the first step, but I think, I don't know. Anyway, not very compelling questions or comments, but anyway, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I didn't say it was eloquent, but I think what I'm trying to do here, Mr. Chairman, just to explain is, I think we do know that there's a lot of good programs in or a lot of good efforts in our communities that can provide programs. I think we clearly heard from the school psychologist that it's important to provide programs to students. I think as long as it's consistent with those, these other statutes, and maybe we work on that, in this, when it hits the floor, if it does, maybe we can expand that a little bit. But I think there's some good programming going on there right now that's geared towards this by our community members. And I think it provides that opportunity for them to bring it into the school, or teachers to use it, or administrators. It could be a program in a school, but it's not going to be necessarily embedded in instruction unless that's something a school wants. So thank you.
Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Summers. I have a friendly amendment, which would be to add to page 1, line 11, where you changed instruction programs, add after that to students. And that's the intent of it. But I think we need it but without that clause in it, there's nothing in here about students. It could be programs to teachers. So is that friendly? Thank you.
Sounds like we've got a thumbs up. We have a thumbs up from the second, and also, I don't remember who seconded that. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, Representative Overview. Okay, and we have other opportunities to work on this bill, and I kind of concur with Representative Harshman. I think that if we decide to move this forward, there probably isn't an amendment that would probably take care of some of his concerns. But I hate doing too many writing a bill on the fly kind of a thing. And I think, 1 or 2 amendments, I'm pretty okay with, but when we get past that, it seemed like that maybe the bill wasn't ready for prime time. So I think we've hashed this thing out pretty well. Is there any other comments from anyone else before we vote on the amendment? Okay, all of those in favor of the amendment as read, please raise your hand. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, all opposed? Okay, one opposed, it looks like. So the amendment passes. Any more discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, are you ready for the question?
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Question been called for. We need to call the roll on this bill. Donna, are you ready? Prepared? There we go.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this is a roll call vote on House Bill 62. Representative Andrew.
No.
Representative Brown.
No.
Representative Brown, no. Representative Connolly.
Representative Connolly, yes.
Representative Harshman.
Harshman, aye.
Representative Nyman.
No.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative Summers.
Summers, aye.
Chairman Paxton.
Chairman Paxton votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 6 yes votes and 3 no votes. The motion passes.
Okay, do we have any volunteers to carry this on the floor? Representative Summers, you're so good at, would you do that for us, please? All right, thank you. All right, I don't know how long our next little session is going to take. I'm going to warn you that we have a time limit, and we have to be finished with this at 4:30 or 5:30, I mean. And so let's take about a 10-minute quick break, which would bring us back in at about 5:10. We'll give you 11 minutes. All right, so we'll be back at 5:10. It looks like most of us are back online. There we go. Well, Representatives Harshman and Summers, we didn't leave you much time. You've got about 20 minutes to give us the Reader's Digest version of this very complex and complicated bill that we have before us. I think we all realize that there's a lot of input that we need yet from stakeholders before we get to the point where we're ready to move too far on this. And as I said earlier, I sure would like to be able to do this in a in-person meeting. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Representative Summers and Harshman and let you enlighten us.
Mr. Chairman, and don't forget Dr. Conley there.
Oh, and Dr. Conley. Yeah.
Also worked hard on that. So thank
Absolutely. You two guys have been the ones pestering me, so I kind of left her out of the loop. So,
Mr. Chairman, I think Donna has her hand up.
Okay, Donna.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you and Representative Summers know that we also have LSO staff in the waiting room. And should you want us to admit them, we will.
Okay, so maybe you don't have 20 minutes. So let's get started and get the Reader's Digest version going here, folks.
So, Mr. Chairman, as we go into this discussion on this bill, and so, Mr. Chairman, I was chairman of the Recal Committee from the House side, and so what I want you to look at when you look at this bill, what this bill really is for those of you that haven't been involved, is it is the legislative model, our current legislative model, put into statute. And the one thing I did want to explain is in the past, our legislative model was really, the guts of it was always referred to as Attachment A. And it was a part of session law. And if I get this messed up and staff and Josh or somebody pops in, they can correct me. But it was in session law, and then in statute, it was referred to as Attachment A, all the components of the model. And well, over time, so when you amend the model, it would end up in session law again as an amendment. And so the model has become a string of amendments in session law. And session law is that book of laws that never ends up in the green books. So never ends up in permanent, well, it's permanent, but it doesn't end up in the main statutes, the numbered statutes. And so staff, when they created this bill, when we decided to go down the path of the legislative model, they put this whole thing in this bill so it would be in the green books if we decided to do it. In the end, we had a lot of discussion. The evidence-based model came out of our consultants, and we had all of us here, the Representative Harshman, Representative Connolly, we had developed scenarios based off that. In the end, I think we came back to what we knew the best, which was the old legislative model. And then basically what the committee did I guess as a way to get a bill out that we could work. Basically all this is an instrument to have the conversation on how we want to provide K-12 funding going forward in the future, and how we are going to pay for that funding, or pay for that K-12 funding. And so in the end, we agreed to get a bill out that had $100 million in cuts. You'll see that in the back pages of the bill. When you go back to page 55 of the bill, let's say not 55, but yeah, if you go back to page 52 of the bill, you'll see where the $100 million cut was made. It was made per ADM. So it's the same ADM, an equal dollar ADM per student across the state applied to each district. And And then what this bill does as well is it goes in on page 54 and it goes into the sales tax statutes, and it creates the opportunity to put a tax in, but it doesn't put a tax in. So what this bill does is it provides both a reduction, I would say, in resources to the current legislative model, and it provides the option for revenue going forward. And so as we think about this moving forward, this committee, it's going to take an incredible amount of time to work this bill. We, those of us that have been involved in it a long time, Representative Harshman, Representative Connolly, Representative Paxton, Representative Brown and Obermueller to a lesser degree, you guys kind of haven't been as involved in it as long as we have. We're going to all have our own opinions on this, right? And as far as how we might make reductions if we want to, or maybe we want to increase the amount of money we give schools. That's all possibilities. We're going to have these debates on what is an appropriate, adequate education for the children in Wyoming, and how do we pay for it? And so, you know, I'm going to leave it at that. We need to have a robust public participation in this, and we need to have a very long time period to work this bill, because it's going to become very involved, I believe. And so I'll turn over some time to Representative Harshman and Representative Connolly, as they served on that committee as well.
Go ahead, Representative Connolly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to add, and especially for the new folks, that I think any of us who have worked in education, and this is definitely a bipartisan issue, that we're incredibly proud of our educational system and think it one of the best in the nation. We can always do better. You know, there's no two ways about it, but we should be incredibly proud of the educational system that we have. And that comes from a constitutional mandate to start with, that we provide a good education through K through 12. And that constitutional mandate has been interpreted by our state Supreme Court through a series of decisions. And those decisions outline that we need to have a good, if not kind of a exceptional educational system, and that it need be both equitable and cost-based. And the court said that equity means that a child in Sundance should have the same opportunities for education as in Laramie. Those were the two cities that were picked out by the Supreme Court. So meaning that we don't have a system that is based on whether or not you live in a wealthy district versus a poor district. Every kid should have the same opportunity. And then the second element is that it need to be cost-based. We can't willy-nilly kind of pick out what we want as an educational system. That every one of us has anecdotes. Every one of us, as the good majority floor leader said, has opinions and views. But what the court has obligated of us is that the system of education that we come up with must be cost-based. It must be equitable. And then we have to fund it. Right? So those are our obligations. So I'll stop there and let the good former speaker bring us home.
So just briefly on that, on the court decisions. For those of you that haven't read them, and I've read them more than once, any of us that's on recalibration, we've read them multiple times. If you go to the first page on the legislative website and you go under finances, and then you click further into school finances, you're going to see the list. I believe it's the next click. You will see the list of the court rulings. And if you have time, I think it's important for you to read them. We can do whatever we want. We are the legislature. And that ultimately the courts can do whatever they want. They're the courts. But anyway, Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. I, appreciate everybody's work on this deal. And I think equal number of senators and House members on this committee. you know, and the work that Chairman Summers did, I think, and trying to reach consensus. And, you know, I think there were probably at least 15 scenarios. I don't know all of them that were run through our LSO staff on different scenarios, different funding model components. And in the end, the one thing the Senate and the House did agree on was really kind of, I think everyone on the committee acknowledged we're not going to cut our way out of this. Our deficit's around 250 million a year. And we're like, you know, and so we've come to this, I don't think we're going to be able to cut 250 million a year. I think there'd be automatic lawsuits. I think there'd be such damage done to our communities across the state. And the thing about K-12 education, we have twice the number of employees in the school system that we do as state employees. And it's really heavily dependent on people. It's 85% people. And so when you see that, we're like every other state. We fund education with property taxes. And the difference with Wyoming as compared to like South Dakota or Nebraska or Colorado or any of our neighbors is that minerals pay, you know, half our property taxes. And it's really allowed us to have the lowest property tax in the country. And that's a real blessing. And I think we're gonna have minerals in this state for a long time. But I think the big thing, we've had a three-legged stool with minerals for a long time with oil, gas, and coal. And really, it first started with gas, and nobody really talked about that. But what's happened to coal? You know, the kids who were seniors this year were fifth graders. We were still mining 400 million tons of coal, 450 million tons. And now we actually had a little uptick this year. We're going to make over 200 million. That's about $500 million, 440 million a year in revenue. And how do you replace those tons of coal? You know, and the devastation alone to the Northeast Wyoming, the jobs, you know, all the activity. It's just been, and I know everybody criticized the legislature. Oh, you should have seen it coming. Should have seen it coming. Well, it's easy to say that in hindsight. And we heard all that. We said, hey, you got 20, 25 years to make this transition. That's what a lot of us were told. And it happened probably faster than, and obviously, do we think it's wrong? Of course it's wrong. I mean, coal is, people of Campbell County have powered this nation. It's been unbelievable. But here we are. And so you have K-12 education, which then of all the, you know, services that our state and our founding says that we're going to provide, from criminal justice and transportation and water and the university system and health and K-12 education, K-12 then is the most dependent on the mineral sector of any other government service. And we have all those LSO studies. I can share those with you as well. And more dependent on minerals in the Department of Health or Justice or any other government service, because it's dependence on property taxes. And so, you know, I think Representative Summers did a great job, and I think working with his Senate counterpart. And really, there's three types of taxes, and none of us like taxes. We prefer to have out-of-staters pay our taxes. Or not, you know, and you got three types of taxes. You got property taxes, which, you know, we have the lowest residential and commercial in the United States. Ag doesn't hardly pay anything, and minerals is assessed at 100%, which is one of the highest anywhere. And so we have really low property taxes, which is really awesome, and I think we can keep them that way. We have one of the lowest sales taxes in the country, 44th out of 46 states that have a sales tax. And we don't have we don't have an income tax. So you got three types of taxes: property, sales, and income. And, you know, unless you're a minerals producer, we have what's called a severance tax. And that's really a gross receipts kind of income tax on those specific companies. And so that's, you know, that's been part of it. So at this bill, you look at it and you go, well, what would, you know, what's doable? What can we talk about? And I think in those negotiations with our counterparts, our colleagues in the Senate, that's why this sales and use tax is in there. And, and I think everybody can debate that. And there's a lot more to this story too. South Dakota is a sales tax, a non-income tax state. I think there's 7 of us that don't have an income tax. South Dakota is one of our only neighbor that doesn't. They tax 152 services, and we tax 66.
Representative Harshman, we need to wrap it up pretty quick.
Yeah, I'll shut up. I'll save
4 hour
you
time
time.
limit, a hard number,
Yeah.
and we do have some people in the waiting room, but they don't have much time left. So I'd
Yeah,
like to give a couple minutes anyway.
Yeah, so I'll shut her down. But anyway, so that's why it's in the bill, because that's what we are agreed to with our Senate counterparts, and that'll all be up for debate. So thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Donna, do we have somebody that wants to at least summarize a little bit on in the waiting room that we can allow just a few minutes? Because I think this is a hard number, that 4 hour time limit. So if we can bring somebody else in, that'd be great. Great preview of things to come from the 3 folks who served on that committee, and we appreciate your time to bring us up to speed.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have anyone in the waiting room who has asked to comment. However, we do have LSO staff member Matt Wilmarth, who's available to answer any technical questions.
Okay, we do have that opportunity then to, if someone has a technical question. Representative Summers, did you ask?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I thought we might have more time than this, so I asked Matt to stick around because I was going to walk through the bill so the new members could understand what the components of the model are. That's going to be for another time, another meeting. But certainly, if anybody has any questions of Matt Wilmarth on anything, that's fine. But I thought we'd have a little more time to at least so people could understand what the components of the model are.
Well, we got pretty long-winded on our previous bills, I guess, and it kind of cut into the amount of time. Representative Harshman.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm serving as chair of revenue now, and so we're having all these conversations. And I think, the problem with sales tax, I mean, here's the problem. We have 7, why in this bill is because we have 4 pennies of state sales tax. And we have a cap of 7 total. Can't have more than 7 total. And so locals can impose up to a couple pennies either for operations, a project, or economic development. And so our sales tax rate in Wyoming is average about 5.4%. And I think, Mr. Chairman and members, as you think about a sales tax, if you imposed a penny for education, what does that do to our local governments? And I guess I'm concerned about that. I mean, because, in Casper, it's a big deal. Our 5th penny is used for operations. It's our police department, fire, all that. And I'm sure it is. I think it's in every county except for 2 right now in Wyoming. And I think it's something to think about, I guess. And so I didn't know if maybe, we got this time now in between for when we come together in March. We're not going to hear this bill, but I was just wondering maybe if maybe we can reach out to those groups, the county commissioners and municipalities at WAM and maybe the school boards. Maybe they can get together and talk about this idea a little bit. We got the problem of 100 million of local distribution that we put in once we took the tax off food to reimburse locals. So that's a drain on the general fund side. I was just wondering what you thought about that. Maybe you could reach out to have those 3 groups.
I think that's a great idea. And since you brought that up, maybe we would like to appoint you as a one-man task force to meet with those stakeholders that we were just talking about. And if you could get together with them at some point in time and gather up some information from them, share information with them, and as we move forward, I'm sure that'll be a critical piece of the puzzle.
I tell you, I probably wouldn't, Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't meet with them, but maybe if you're okay, I think, we all know all these people, I mean, school boards, is Mr. Farmer and DeCaria, and I think Jeremiah Ryman with the county commissioners. And then, And then I think it's Mr. Frazier, isn't it, with Wham? It's taken over. But, and maybe those guys, those people all work in the same circles and they study this all the time. Maybe they can get together and come back to the committee with some ideas. I don't know. So, okay, I'll contact them then. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Newsom, I saw your hand up. Can you bring us home?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm meeting with I think the Bighorn Basin County Commissioners on Monday, kind of for an all morning deal. So if you could send me by email kind of the talking points of this, that would be helpful so that I can talk intelligently with the Bighorn Basin County Commissioners about this issue.
Representative Harshman, can you manage that?
You bet. I'll call you, Representative Newsom. And sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Looks like we're about 1 minute beyond our designated time limit, and I hate to cut us off where we are right now, but I don't think we have a lot of choice. So I'd like to thank the committee for a very robust discussion, and I think we had a great meeting for a first meeting, and a special thanks out to Donna Shippen and Carla Smith for keeping us on track and keeping us going. So thank you very much, ladies, for your good work. And I guess the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all.
Thank you.